sir.
Looks like I'm interested. Can I take it? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone who's here to the Planning Board meeting of August 26th. My name is Lucy Bisson, and I would ask Amy Smith to do the roll call, please.
Roger Dupree.
Here.
Mark Roy.
Here.
Michael Marcotte.
Present.
Shanna Cox. Here. Lucy Bisson.
Here.
Alex Pine.
Here.
Amy Smith. Here.
Thank you. Okay, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Sorry, no.
I knew I'd catch you there. And any correspondence?
No.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and the planning board is to send a recommendation to the city council for an amendment to the zoning and land use code for changes to Article 2 definitions, to add new definitions and combine others. Article 5, administration and enforcement, to clarify language and streamline processes. Article 9, appeals and variances for changes to public notice. Article 11, district regulations for changes to the land use table, space and bulk table, groundwater conservation overlay, and design district overlay. Article 12, performance standards for minor changes to shoreland area, parking, and marijuana standards. Article 13, development review and standards for changes to landscaping, maintenance, amenity space, and performance guarantee. And Article 15, significant buildings and districts for changes to definitions and review of signs. I believe that the easiest way for us to do it will be to go article by article, and we should vote on each article separately. That way it will keep things neat, and we'll do one, finish it, and move on. Okay. All right, Shelley, would you give us the recommendation, the comments, and start with Article 2?
Okay, great. So you will have noticed that we gave you 3 memos this evening. The first one is for all of the articles except for Article 15. We gave that to you as a separate part of your packet and memo, so I won't be talking about that with this memo. We also have a third memo that talks about changes to the design Lewiston standards and guidelines. And in that, and I just want to preface, in that and in Article 11 in the overlay district, staff has not provided a recommendation for the amount of glazing that you might consider changing to, or the frequency of doors, that dimension. Some of those items that were discussed last time and have been discussed previously that you're looking to possibly make changes to. Instead, we gave you a document that highlights a number of the waivers that you've seen in the last few years with a number of projects to give you a sense for what the range of waivers were that you were seeing, as well as give you building elevations with glass amounts. So when we get to Article 11, we may want to skip it until we get to the design standards discussion. So that'll be up to the board if you want to do the design standard discussion at the same time as Article 11 first, or do it towards the end. But Article 2 should be straightforward. So the memo really outlines in fair amount of detail the changes in Article 2. So I'm not going to run through it. If anyone has questions, I can do that in more detail. But
okay, I have a stupid question probably. On page 2 of the definitions item that you gave us, it's the small care, you've got family daycare home, and then you've got small daycare facility, and it says shall not be operated within a private family residence, i.e. dwelling unit. Well, where will it be allowed?
yeah, so the family daycare home is a home business, if you will.
Yeah,
where someone
I
has a
understand
daycare.
that one.
A small daycare facility is a commercial building of some kind or tenant space where someone has a daycare. It's not within a residential unit.
Okay. We don't want to articulate that, to say that it's got to be in a separate.
It's the only option that's not a home.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Is it clear enough for
I
everybody
get
else?
what
I
you-
mean, I
I
gave
get
you
what
up
you're
twos
saying,
today.
and I might take it in a slightly different tact is that, you know, we're trying to sort of encourage people to have businesses in the city. And so telling people this is what, you know, if you want to operate this type of business, it should be in this area. So it's a little more affirmative, might be helpful. So like, small daycare facility shall not be operated within private family residences.
I
And
think that could
instead
get-
should be in,
I think that could get confusing.
is too much.
I mean, the family daycare is, I think
It's in
these
the law.
definitions
clear
parse them
enough
out. Yeah, but it's.
Okay, that's fine. I may be being obtuse and Alex too.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's helpful, but it still leaves me with questions, just not that question.
Okay, well, then, go ahead.
How does this language line up with state licensing? Same language, and that's why we're adopting it?
The numbers certainly do, so when we do there's a form that we have to fill out, the up to 12 is a cutoff number for them for licensing, and then it's like over the 12 number of children. So it does, we haven't had any issues with the language, so that's why we're not
Yeah, because it was
proposing
just moved
content.
from the second page
Yeah.
to the front page.
Yeah.
But and
Yeah.
still, if we're changing it, does it match the same? So when a business comes to you and is trying to operate as a family daycare center, which they have to get licensed, is the licensing, if that was me, am I going to use this definition and it's the same language as the license that I'm filling out with the state?
I'm not sure that for the person applying that it gets to that level. They just bring the state form that they need us to fill out. And we'll make a determination like this is this size thing, it's allowed in this zoning district, you're allowed up to X number of children, you have to meet the parking requirements for, you know, daycare. So it doesn't, we haven't had any issues with people being confused or the state being confused or code enforcement being confused with this language.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Anybody? Yes, Roger.
On the fitness and recreation sports centers, should we add pickleball courts to that?
I'm sorry, what kind of courts?
Pickleball,
Oh.
where we have a defined pickleball area now.
Good question.
I would argue yes.
Yeah, I would think we should because
Particularly
it's
since we've
being,
improved
it's getting to be a big thing.
Yeah.
I think as staff, when we see handball, racquetball, or tennis club, we would probably assume pickleball, but
Can we just put it in with
Yes, we could.
handball, racquetball, pickleball,
Yep.
and tennis club?
we could absolutely do that.
Well, what's the point of that if it's not limited to?
Yeah, what's the point of any of them?
What's the point of any of those
Yeah.
specifications if it's including but not limited to? Why wouldn't you
Yeah.
just, as listed under NAICS code 713940, and leave it as that?
We could do that. We found in practice that while staff looks up that code, it can be a little confusing for the public, and also it's helpful for staff to have some examples there. But we could simplify it if the board wanted to.
I mean, I don't care either way.
Yeah,
I'd favor leaving it just because it's helpful to
Yeah.
people who are applying, you know?
I appreciate the sentiment though.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments on this particular, on Article 2?
I'm trying to remember from my architecture class in college. Are we missing shed roofs in the list of roofs for height of building? So that would be just a roof with one incline plane that would still need to be averaged out? Or is that covered in your mind under one of the other?
Yeah, is the ridge the one side and the eave the other in that first?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I just wonder about that because, you know, it's not a flat roof, but it's not.
Is it a roof surface though? Because then it still gets it with the highest point of roof surface?
Let's see, vertical measurement, finished grade
It's the first one with the all.
Or to the
Yeah.
highest point of roof surface?
of a flat roof. Yeah,
Flat roof.
but
Did
it's not a
you-
flat roof.
Yeah, if you were wanting to average it, so we could add, we could add shed roof, I'm not familiar with that. We could also add the midpoint of a pitched roof. you know,
I
or
think-
the midpoint of a pitched roof.
Yeah, I think
doesn't
Yeah, I
that
think
might
that
quite,
might be
you know.
a little,
A little bit better,
more,
yeah.
more accessible too for folks who maybe don't know what a gambrel roof is.
Right, and why specify a shed when the midpoint of
Anything with a
anything
slope.
that with a slope? Yeah, that
If
would,
it's
I
a
think. that-
dome, if
Yeah,
it's.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works. Okay. Anybody else have any? Roger?
Shelley, is there a need for drive-in theaters?
Not so far in Lewiston, but maybe.
There's one in the state, and he's on the verge of going out of business.
No, there's actually quite a few still. Yeah, there's,
Drive-in theaters?
yeah, there's definitely a handful. I mean, I know the one in Bridgeton is live and kicking because I've driven by it. And there's one, I thought, in Westbrook and a few other.
Saco.
Saco, yeah.
Aqua was the only one that I know of.
Oh, the Bridgeton one's killing it.
Bridgeton went out of business.
No, they're operational.
They changed ownership at risk of going out of business, and now we're doing great.
Last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well,
but-
if
but I
there
mean,
are
that's a
some,
good
then we might as
question,
well
whether
just
it
leave
is-
it. Yeah, I think it's never gonna happen, because land cost is too expensive to have that much empty lot, 9 months out of the year, but I think, why don't we just leave it? Okay, so technically, this is a public hearing, so I'm gonna open it up to the public. There being no one in the audience, I will close it to the public and bring it back to the board. And I would entertain either questions or making a motion.
I'm happy to make a motion, but can I just check in real quick? Does all of this language in the action necessary?
No, I think just specify the one that you're doing. Article pursuant to
I didn't see an article.
zoning and land use, Article 5 administration. Yeah, I think it's
that right?
amendments to Appendix A zoning and land use code, starting here. Definitions, and stop here, and then the next one will be Article 5 administration and enforcement. And then Article 9 appeals and variances.
Sure. But before you go through it all,
Yeah, but the rest, I think the beginning, we need to have all that stuff.
all of the articles and sections up above are necessary.
The
Article 7, Section 4,
yes.
Article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And before you do that, can I just clarify with height of building that I'm adding the midpoint of a sloped roof, but I'm not eliminating gable, hip, mansard, or gambrel, or did you want to eliminate those?
No, I think you can keep those and just add that one phrase. That's my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
It's consensus now.
Excuse me.
I'd like to make a motion pursuant to Article 7, Section 4, and Article 17, Section 5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for amendment to Appendix A, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 2, definitions as updated here today.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Roger?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Shanna?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Lucy? Yes. Okay. Next article will be Article 5.
Can I ask a question before we,
Of course.
maybe it doesn't matter yet, but Article 11, District Regulations is the first place in which, under N, we're holding something potentially till later because of the glazing. Okay, and that's the only other, that's the first next place that comes up?
Where Article 11, yes, so it would be in
Article 11
Section
N
24.
is where you're noting the connection to,
The glazing.
it's hard to say later agenda item because it's all one agenda item, but where we're looking at another memo, you're linking N to a second memo. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So when we get there, can we still move on all of it through M so that we don't?
You could
Got
certainly
O2.
discuss it, but I would think that you should make decisions about what changes you want to make in Section 24 before you make a motion to adopt those changes for Article 11.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Article 5. Shelley?
Okay. So the first change with this is At some point in time in our ordinance, we had a subsection W and Z. We no longer do. So we've amended that language to create that, to correct that change. There are a couple of changes to the administrative procedures for clarity in how that reads, and so it's a pretty straightforward set of changes for Article 5.
Okay, anyone have any questions, comments? Shannon?
Can you read out loud the amended change you're making at the bottom of the front side of this page that starts with work exempt?
Yes. So when you start at the top with subsection C, permits are not required for the following, then you list items 1 through 7. Work exempt from a permit shall not be deemed to grant authorization for any work to be done in any manner in violation of this code or any other laws or ordinance.
You said it with such confidence, and I really appreciate that. There's something about the center structure that I don't know if it makes sense to me.
Okay.
Shall not be deemed necessary to grant authorization? Like, is there a word missing there?
Doesn't grant, the fact that you're exempt doesn't grant you authorization.
I think like getting rid of deemed might help us
Yeah,
out
there's
here,
something
'cause
that
it's
doesn't connect. Like, I understand the
basically, like,
intent.
Shall not grant authorization, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't know if it's double negative or, but something about that just reads funny.
Yeah,
So we remove be deemed to?
yeah, so it should
Okay.
be just work exempt from a permit shall not grant authorization for any work to be done in a manner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That feels a lot more
I think
clear.
that's better language.
Agreed. Yep.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, anyone else have any questions, comments on this one? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Whoops, you
Oh,
said,
just real quick. It's not mentioned as a change, but I am wondering about retaining walls not over 4 feet in height, measured from the bottom of the footing, so like that's the foundation block, to the top of the wall.
what are you reading? Oh,
This is
number 2.
Number 2,
Okay.
C2. I mean, in this climate, often the footing goes down 4 feet to deal with frost. So is this like ineffective? Just like,
Is it ground level is what the implication is there?
are we? Yeah, I guess. I'm sort of like, If you're measuring
Yeah.
from the bottom of the footing and the footing is 4 feet underground.
I'll say that this, I believe, mirrors the state law for building code.
Got
And
it.
our code guys understand what this means and had us change that a few years
Perfect.
ago, because they changed the height at which you need like an engineer to do it. But
If the
I'm
state's
not sure
happy
I
with
have
it.
that answer for
If our
you.
the
No,
city
it's
engineer
all
is
good.
happy with it, I guess that works. Okay, so any other questions or comments? All right, in that case, I will open it up to the public. I will close the public portion and bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Michael?
Just clarification on the definition of the word surcharge in that section about retaining walls. Unless supporting a surcharge. What does that mean specifically?
That's number 2. It's
Let me
the
look it
Bet
up
you city
for
and
you.
the staff, state and the staff know.
retaining walls that are not over measured.
Is that like
not
a
over-
fee?
Unless supporting a surcharge. Yeah, what does that mean?
Definition.
Is that a structural thing or a
It's gotta be
fee?
structural.
It is, but I'm not gonna guess at the definition.
Yeah, right.
It's not a like fee item. It'd be a weird place to put in a.
Yeah, it's not a money thing, it's a support thing, I guess.
I've never heard of the word being used outside of
Of
financial.
money, right? Yeah.
Also not in the foundation business. Maybe that's.
Yeah, that's true, we are not, so.
I
This
should be,
may,
'cause I need
again,
some
this
work
may
done.
have something, may have meaning to the city engineer and those people that we don't know anything about.
Yeah, so far, the early sense of the noun was excessive load, so I think that must be how engineering.
Oh, the
thinks
the
of
load?
it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've got a surcharge is a load applied to the ground to speed up consolidation before construction can begin.
okay.
Cool.
All right, does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sufficient.
Okay, so, everybody okay? All right, Roger Dupree.
Would you like me to make a motion?
Oh, yes, that would help. I'm sorry.
I love the energy here tonight.
Yeah,
I'd like to
let's-
make a motion pursuant to Article 7, Section 4, and Article 17, Section 5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for amendments to Article 5.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Amy. All right, any further questions or comments? Roger Dupree.
Yes.
Mark Roy.
Yes.
Michael Marcotte.
Yes.
Shanna Cox.
Yes.
Alex Pine.
Yes.
Amy Smith.
Yes.
Lucy Bisson. Yes. Okay.
Procedural note. Do
Yes.
we need to speak more into the mics to make
We
sure we're
should.
capturing everyone?
That would be great. If people just want to pull your mics a little closer to you, thank you.
Yep. Okay. So next one is, okay, Article 9, Appeals and Variances. So it looks like there's just one little change by regular mail to in writing.
That allows the flexibility, not with the butters notices, we wouldn't do that, but with like an applicant, if their preferred method of contact is email, and certainly for emailing our boards and, you know, staff.
Okay. Sure, Mark?
Would it include text messages?
No, we don't send text messages. I mean, I suppose it could someday
Yeah,
if that
okay.
becomes a standard thing, but we don't have an ability as a department to do that.
Okay.
Stone tablets?
I do hope that we're
Yeah, we
like
can.
slightly out of compliance and have been accepting email for a while, because with the pace of mail, I can only imagine what people would think of our business service if we only did things by.
All of those should fall under writing, though.
Yeah, they all will. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'll open it up to the public. I will close it to the public and bring it back to the board, and I will entertain a motion if there are no other questions or comments.
I'll make a motion.
Sure.
Pursuant to Article 7, Section 4, and Article 17, Section 5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code, to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for amendment to administration and enforcement.
Second.
Okay.
Article
Alex-
9.
Oh, Article 9.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. And do I have a second? You have a second? Okay. So any further questions or comments? Michael?
I'm just curious, the footnote at the bottom of the page is simply a footnote, it's not part of the code, correct?
Yeah, no, that's just a note for you and the council.
Okay,
Yep.
so the abutters is addressed somewhere else in the code?
What do you mean?
Where you say, with the it says
So
to me,
number
yes.
3 there, it requires us to send it to abutters.
Okay, so number 3 is addressing it,
Yep.
okay.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Roger Dupree.
Yes.
Mark Roy.
Yes.
Michael Marcotte.
Yes,
Shanna Cox.
Yes.
Alex Pine.
Yes.
Amy Smith.
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, yes. Okay. Article 11,
Okay.
accept section N.
Okay, you want to go through it and then we'll come back to N?
Well, N we'll do when we do, N is the glazing. So do we want to skip N, or do we want to do, yeah, and do it later, when we do the design standards? Okay, so we'll.
That was my preference. Shelley didn't seem to prefer that earlier.
Well, I guess my question was, if you're making a motion on Article 11, it would be cleaner for you to make a motion on everything for Article 11.
Okay.
So
All
if
right,
you want
all
to
right.
discuss it now and then come back to it to make a motion later, that seems totally reasonable if that's the pleasure of the board.
Sure, so just for my own sake, we're gonna have a full conversation, we're gonna take some notes, we're not gonna make a motion, we're gonna move on to Article 12. We'll go through the rest of this, we'll save our little action necessary for later, we'll wait till a second or third memo and come back for
For
N,
N. Well, come back for
A whole
all of
shebang.
11.
but because of N.
Yeah.
Does
Okay.
that work for folks? Okay,
Okay,
all right.
Shelley.
Okay, so Article 11, as you're aware, that's where our land use table and our bulk standards table are located. So the first set of changes is to the land use table itself. So if you want to look at that. The changes proposed, this aligns with the cleanup in the definitions to the various types of daycares that we have. So we're looking to move the family daycare home from the residential section adjacent to the small daycare and daycare centers, so it's all in the same area. Just for lack of confusion, I think, for the public and for staff, just to have all the daycares in one spot. Yeah,
Sorry, but it seems like the right time to ask it. We've got daycare centers accessory to public schools, religious facilities, multifamily or mixed residential developments, and mobile home parks, which we did not see a definition of. Is that because it simply did not get changed and it's not on our page?
yeah, so it's really, the definition of a daycare center still applies. It's just when it's located with those facilities, then they're allowed in greater areas of the zoning, essentially, because they're, I think accessory would be the thought process to that type of the facility.
Okay.
Okay.
So for what that's worth, anything with less than 12 children but attached to any of those programs.
It's actually more than, because daycare centers are the largest facility that we have. So the small daycares are allowed in the same zoning districts when you look above. And then the daycare centers are allowed in less locations because there are a greater number of children, but with a conditional use permit and associated with those uses, they are allowed.
You need to speak up,
Oh, sorry.
Shelley, because I can't always hear you.
Okay. So because those, where those uses are allowed, the public school, the religious facility, multifamily, the daycare center, which is our largest size of daycare, is only allowed as a conditional use permit associated with those uses. Otherwise, it's not allowed in those districts. And then the small daycare is allowed in many more locations just because it's smaller.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Next.
Okay. So staff wanted to take, the last portion of this was a recreation kind of subsection on the back, bottom. We felt it was beneficial to move the campgrounds into the natural resources section and eliminate the recreation section entirely and move the rest of those to the commercial uses because they are commercial in nature. So the outdoor recreation, you can see we also did some changes. The commercial outdoor recreation and drive-in theaters, we made some tweaks there to eliminate that use. So we've just tried to consolidate all of our different recreational type uses. We eliminated one, we've changed the definitions to a couple to accommodate some of the uses into that, and then changed where they're located on the chart just for streamlining.
Okay. Any questions, comments on that particular issue? Okay, next.
All right, the only other change is on the second page, the civic and social organizations at the top under institutional. Staff added some additional zoning districts where we felt like that use would be appropriate. That actually came up for us when Seniors Plus wanted to expand. So that was a good example of if we categorize them as a civic use, they technically aren't allowed in that zoning district because they have restaurant and office facilities and that sort of thing at the space. We were able to classify them and allow the use, but we've really, whether something is like a not-for-profit or a profit, we feel like the use is still probably appropriate in a lot of those zoning districts if they are a civic organization or a not-for-profit.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments on that one? Okay.
I think I do.
Yeah, go ahead. No, that's fine.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
I appreciate the places that they've been added, they've been named as conditional. What guidance might we be coming to that offers what those conditions are? And I say this because there's a regular reoccurring debate among where we allow untaxed property to exist and some of the places in which we've offered that conditional use, like the riverfront, right, are areas that we're looking for economic growth. Case in point, I think the main mill, the museum, is a not-for-profit. It'll be great for that area. Of course, they should be there, but that's a gut feel, right? And so when this board gets a not-for-profit 501c3 application for development in some of these areas, do we have the guidance? Do we have the conditions of which we're considering for the waiver for those? Because I can hear the commentary in my head now of what will happen if the planning board just updates the definition and allows nonprofits to take all the, like, that narrative. I don't want to feed it, and I think there are a lot of great places where strategically it makes a ton of sense. Some of that's in line with some of the outdoor recreational uses. A lot of that is managed by not-for-profits. I just want to know that if we're opening up conditional use in new zones of which we are targeting economic growth, that we are doing so with intention and that we are offered the guidance to implement it well.
Okay. No, those are great questions. I want to start by sharing the definition of civic and social organization so we all know what we're talking about, since that wasn't in your packet. So that's a not-for-profit organization of a charitable, philanthropic, social, or fraternal nature organized under the laws of the state of Maine. Then we also have the conditional use permit section of the ordinance. And there are standards here, but they're very focused on the nuisances to neighbors, the amount of traffic. So I can tell you, kind of go through that briefly for you. So the review criteria you would be using if you were determining whether you could grant a conditional use permit or not. The first one looks at whether the site where it's going to be located, if they would have a significant adverse impact upon the value or quiet possession of surrounding properties, greater than would normally occur in that zoning district. And you would need to look at the size of the use compared to the surrounding uses, the amount and type of traffic generated, the hours of operation, expanse of pavement, number of parking spaces comparable to the surrounding uses to see if it fits in with the character. The generation of noise, dust, odor, vibration, glare, smoke, litter, and other nuisances compared to the surrounding uses. The impact of the use on the quality and quantity of groundwater available to the abutting uses, whether it's similar to those. Unusual physical characteristics of the site, including size of the lot, shape of the lot, topography, and soils, and that it would not aggravate the adverse impacts upon those surrounding properties. Then there's a section on vehicular and pedestrian access into it to make sure it's safe, make sure it wouldn't create hazards, and that there would be inadequacy. Looking at the topography of the site and making sure driveways and entrances can be safely designed. Making sure that there's adequate pedestrian facilities, making sure that the use wouldn't overtax the municipal facilities serving the use. So burdening the sewage, water, supply systems, capacity of our storm drainage system, and the ability of the fire department to serve it. Whether the soils on site are appropriate for the type of development and loading of the development being proposed, and whether the scale of the design, the proposed structures, whether they're in scale and massing to the nearby structures within 500 feet. So it's really about fitting into the neighborhood, not creating undue burden, and not creating nuisances that are above and beyond what's normal in that neighborhood. So it would really be more about hours of operation in the site plan than it would be about the type of business, if you will. So that would be what you'd be using for criteria to determine whether to grant a conditional use permit or not.
Okay. Follow-up question?
Sure.
Historically, was that not a allowable use in the areas of which they're being added for tax-paying purposes? Like all of your criteria didn't really, I mean, the one that gets kind of close is the burdening of the systems.
Sure, yeah.
But if the intention behind where they were permitted previously versus where they weren't has anything to do with making sure the highest and best value of our taxable property remains in the tax rolls, for example. And we just go throw Cs in there without
Yeah.
having had that conversation.
Good question. I don't know as our staff was here for any discussion like that that would have happened in the past, so I'm not sure. That might be the rationale.
Yeah. I have spent years serving on boards for nonprofits. I work for a nonprofit. I believe that they add to communities in great ways. I also recognize that that's an argument I have to make regularly, particularly in this community where so much of our tax base sits off tax rolls, right? Our property. And so I don't want us to just approve this small little change with these little Cs and not have had this conversation, even if the conversation resolves with, great, we'll take it up when there's something in front of us. But I just wanted to check in with my peers.
Yeah, I think, the thing is, take it up when we're faced with it, like when Seniors Plus came, what they were proposing, and I wasn't here, but I mean, I do understand the concept. What they were proposing fit in where they wanted to put it. So I think that's what we've got to, as a board, look at the time that somebody comes up with. And like the museum, it fits where they're going to do it. So I think we need to do it on a case-by-case basis. Anyone? Yeah, Alex.
I think an argument could also be made for us, having more places where we can allow that use conditionally means that we're not going to be concentrating those activities in certain areas. And so, if you do have this view that those can create a burden on the tax roll or a burden on a neighborhood in some way, this allows for that to be more equally spread in the city and for things to be placed where they make the most sense, not just sort of like, well, there's only 4 places we can put it, so I guess it's going here, right? So I think I like the conditional approach. I think, one of the tensions that we always see as the planning board is I think people want us to make decisions on projects based on sort of a set of criteria that's not really our bailiwick. And I mean, that's tension that's just always going to exist, right? People needing to understand where the lever of power is here. But overall, I think it is good to open this up, allow it to be a little more flexible in terms of placement, but still allow for sort of that oversight, in terms of like, how is it going to impact the community that it's going into.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay.
Not about that.
Not about that, okay. All right, so next,
Did you have more questions about this chart?
I had a different question.
oh, okay, all right, well.
So the only thing left in recreation is going to be campgrounds. Is there a reason why we just didn't move that to, like, let's say, commercial service?
Yeah, so actually, we've crossed out the recreation, so campgrounds would go in the natural resource
Oh, I
section.
see. Yeah, okay.
And probably we'd alphabetize it, so we'd actually move it, so it would look a little different than that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? No, all right. So is there anything else that it changed? I noticed there's the bulk, space and bulk is also part of this.
Yep.
And
Okay. So moving on to, sorry, I think I covered up my notes here.
E.
Moving on to section 23. So the space and bulk table changes for that. So Craig went through and did some consolidating through here. So that's some of what you're seeing where we've crossed out like 60,000 square feet for in the lot sizes. And the reason being that there's, those are residential uses, and when you get down to the net lot area per dwelling unit, that essentially ends up regulating those lot sizes, right? So there's the permitted uses other than listed below at the very top that gives you your minimum, and then if you want to have dwelling units, then your net lot area per dwelling unit ends up determining how big a lot you need based on how many units you want to do. So we felt like there was a redundancy here on the chart that was potentially confusing. If you want us to dig into that a little deeper, with like an example or something, we can do that.
Yeah, Shannon? Sure.
I'm good.
Oh, you're good?
Okay.
Just giving positive feedback too. I'm good.
All
That's
right.
great. Looks great. Looking good.
All right, anybody else have any questions or
Okay.
comments? Okay, so that takes care of the space and bulk.
Well, just that one portion,
Oh,
sorry.
that one.
That was
I'm
just
sorry.
E.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, all the 23s.
Oh, all the
So,
23s, so we've got,
In the lot size with public
Okay.
sewer, he had also added some minimum sizes for two-family dwellings, which just provides consistency for the low density and the suburban residential, which provides consistency with how we've treated that in other zoning districts. So that's just providing consistency there. Then when we made changes last year for LD 2003, you'll see in the dimensional requirements column, the single-family detached or mobile homes, which we've highlighted in green, the big parts there. We neglected to say 2 detached dwelling units on the lot. So as we've worked with this language, we've realized there's a little more tweaking we needed to do there. And when we specify detached there, it makes the fact that we have 2 family dwellings 2 lines down makes sense. That's still a separate thing. And that's why we've added that. So, so we just provided that clarity in the minimum lot size and minimum frontage.
okay.
Okay. Moving down to front setbacks. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Does someone have a question?
Just
Oh, sorry.
quick question.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a definition here somewhere, but just so I can have it in my head, like what's the difference between a 2-family dwelling and a single-family attached?
Sure.
Like if you
There
have
is
2
actually
single
a-
families attached, is that a 2-family dwelling? Because they're
Yeah.
just sharing a wall, or like is this sort of like if you put 2 cakes next to each other, it's something, and if you put 2 cakes on top of each other, it's a different thing?
I like the cakes. That's great. So the 2-family is non-specific with how it's arranged. So it could be on top of each other. It could be a basement apartment. They could be side by side. It could be over a garage, and
Yeah.
they're attached. But so there's a lot of flexibility with how the 2-family is. But they're both principal dwellings, if you will. One isn't kind of subservient like with the accessory dwelling unit. With the single-family attached, the definition is really specific, and I think this probably gets a little bit to building code where it talks about a firewall, and
Got it.
they're not stacked on top of each other. They're essentially like a row house type
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, I've got the definition.
Yeah, if you want to read
Got
that.
it.
Cakes matter.
Yes?
So we've got the definition right here. A single-family attached dwelling. A is a building containing single-family dwelling units, each with 2 or more vertical fire separation walls, or 1 vertical fire separation wall in the case of a dwelling unit at the end of a group of attached units, which have no dwelling units above or below them, and which have no common hallways. So that's the specific.
So basically row houses.
Pretty
Okay.
much.
Yeah, okay.
And could be 4 families.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
there's no
right,
limit to the
multiple.
number.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't specify how many, it just says there's gotta be a firewall between when there's 2 on each side.
Side.
And the end one only has to have 1 firewall because it's only got 1 attached wall. Okay, does that
Okay.
answer your questions?
I
Or do
think
you have another
so.
one?
And then so for, in that case, basically, when we're looking at the space and bulk table, these numbers in here are for 1 unit built in that style.
So for the single-family attached, for example, you're looking at, is it single-family attached? Well, we had a requirement that there be 60, or, yeah, I'm sorry. It depends on which category we're talking about. If it's like the frontage, then it would be for the whole development. You wouldn't need the frontage for each unit
No, he's still talking about,
Single-family attached.
attached.
yeah,
Yeah, so-
he's still talking
well-
about single-family attached, not frontage now.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying So which element of the single-family attached are you
So,
asking
so the
about?
one that just like popped out at me was single-family attached. If you do it in rural agricultural, which sort of like row houses in the middle of a hayfield, sure.
Yep.
20 acres, just you have two row houses next to each other.
So that's actually for the single-family cluster development or the mixed single-family residential development.
As well as the single-family
Family.
attached.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, that's how it's
It's-
listed in there.
Yeah, because it's got it
Not-
attached, so that would mean, like
I
he
don't-
says, it could be just two.
They're saying for the above
It's
that.
the,
So for the minimum
if you're
lot
looking at the
size,
first set of items, it's
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
second one, just below the highlighted stuff, in the first block.
So that might be something.
That
I
looks like
missed.
an error.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that doesn't make any sense.
Nice work, Alex.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, so
All
that
right.
should be deleted, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll add that
Remove that.
to what we're doing.
Good. Sorry, I thought I was going crazy, but I just
Me too.
wasn't looking in the right spot.
No, that's fine,
So-
that's fine.
So is it going to be deleted or is it going to be changed to
I think
60,000 square feet? Like,
it
above.
makes sense in this case, so permitted uses unless otherwise listed below is 40,000 square feet.
oh, I see.
And then depending upon how many houses you want to do, the net lot area per dwelling unit is going to come into play.
I see.
So it would either be 30,000 if you had public sewer, which is unlikely, but I suppose you could extend or create sewer in the rural ag as an example, or 60,000 if you don't. So that's really going to start regulating the lot size more than our actual lot size regulation based on how many homes you want to build.
Okay, so are we removing it, or are we,
So, yeah, so I
Changing
think the best path forward is minimum lot size with public sewer to remove the requirement of any, just take that 20 acres out. and
right,
then
just
it-
take that whole
It
line
would be the
out?
40,000 at the top, there are
Yeah.
permitted uses
Right.
unless otherwise listed
No.
below.
No,
Leave
just,
this and-
yeah,
and
just
just
leave this,
remove
yeah.
that.
So we'd leave it blank.
Yeah, okay. All right, I just want to make sure that, yes, Michael?
Lowering it from 60 to 30,000, does that have the effect of urban sprawl? Creating more opportunity for development in the
So-
rural agricultural?
When I was, and I mostly put this particular section together, when I was looking through our GIS, through our just city mapping, it's really not, it's not gonna have that effect. And that's because in the rural ag zone, there's absolutely no city sewer. You would need to extend it, and, extending city sewer is very costly. So by and large, it will be regulated. Anything in the rural ag will almost always be regulated by minimum net lot area without public sewer. The 30,000 square foot minimum net lot area, that's more, I don't know, it's mostly just being consistent with the other zoning districts, looking through the minimum net lot area per dwelling unit with public sewer. We've got, low-density residential, suburban residential. As you go down the line, the highest is, we've got 7,000, we've got 10,000. I want to bring that more into line. At the same time, it's it could be removed really without any sort of repercussion either way, just because it's just not a very common thing that there will be city sewer in the rural ag zone.
It potentially incentivizes someone if they were going to do a larger development to consider creating like a sewer system of some kind. So it would make it more feasible to do that.
Okay.
I would just also add the neighborhood business. It looks like we're removing the 60,000 and 40,000 for single-family attached and two-family dwellings in the NB, and the 20,000 square feet would kind of rule the day, and minimum lot sizes without public sewer. And I would actually say that the removing of that incentivizes those two versions of housing in the neighborhood business zone. Like, you could get more in because it's, which we need, and that would be one of the places I would think that it should go, and not in rural ag, for example. So I think it incentivizes it into the places that keeps urban sprawl limited and puts it more into city centers.
And probably the neighborhood business zone has sewer, whereas, whereas the ag zone doesn't have public sewers.
And won't get it for a long time.
And won't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, who's gonna pay, I don't know what it is, 50 grand a foot or more to get sewered into, a couple of miles? I mean, I don't think that's gonna work. They're not gonna do that.
And if I remember right, neighborhood business is the classification, because I wasn't in support of neighborhood business at the time, and it's a bit of a tug of war on goods and bads on both sides. The Martell School property and the former Wiseman Farm, 55 Old Lisbon Road.
I think so.
Yes, I believe they are.
Both are served by public sewer, though?
I would.
I mean,
Martell
Martell would be,
Martell
I
would
don't know
probably.
as the.
I don't know, but I don't
Lisbon
think
Road
so.
is.
The
I'm not
Wiseman Farm
sure.
problem. It could be, because it could, who knows?
Have not memorized the sewer
Doesn't
maps.
matter. Okay. Anybody else have any
Out there.
questions, comments on that particular aspect? Anything else on the space and bulk? that-
Yep, two more, I think H
Yep.
and I and J.
Yep,
So
the front setbacks. Okay, so now we're talking front setbacks.
yes. Yep, so when we get to front setback, and I've added maximum front setback. So we have the minimum front setback and maximum front setback. And then I've edited the chart accordingly so it matches what I'm proposing for setbacks in our design district. So right now, for example, in Centreville, we have, what did we have? We had 5-foot max, which was 0 to 5 feet. Now I'm proposing 5 feet to 12 feet as the setback. So getting rid of the 0 setback so that we have room for street trees. We don't have any buildings with footers under the right-of-way that need to get special approval from DOT and Public Works, which we had to do for DeWitt. And then giving it more than that 10 feet, moving it out to 12. So that's still trying to keep the buildings pretty close to the road in Centreville, because that's one of our most developed areas, but trying to eliminate the need for that waiver to not have planting in the right-of-way, and now require essentially those street trees to be maintained by the developer instead of adding them to the list of street trees for the city to maintain. So another example is in the Mill District. It was 5 foot to 10 foot. And so, or was it 0 to 10?
It says 10-foot max.
Yeah, so it was a 10-foot max, so it was 0 to 10 feet, I believe. Because it was a little confusing how we had it on the chart.
Looks like it was 10 feet to 10 feet is what it looked like to me.
Yeah.
Like it
I
had
think
to
it
be
was 10.
absolutely
I think it was 0 to 10. Yeah. So the suggestion there is again to make the minimum 5 feet, so that there is room for those street trees, and then to bump it out to 18 feet. And that seems quite a bit greater, right, than the 10 feet. The reason I suggested that, when I looked at aerial photos and at the existing buildings and measured what was in the area which that we have zoned as Mill District, it's either parking lots and there's no building next to the road, or there is a fairly decent setback in most of the case. I'll say it's a lot of parking lots. It's not a lot of buildings. So it seemed like in keeping with that, we would have, a little bit broader area if someone did want to do landscaping or do a courtyard in front. And similarly, I was thinking that with riverfront, the 15 feet gives us room for more of a courtyard and a little more generous planting on the street if people wanted that.
Okay, question? Yes, Shanna?
I like the numbers that you're proposing, they make a lot of sense. So the minimum front setbacks are by use and then by district. The maximum, I think what your intention is that there is either no maximum except we're listed in these, 4 different use zones. Should they not be on the same row? Or should there be something in the dimensional requirements column associated with these? They're just riding alone with no
There's no
label.
description on that
The
line.
row?
If you follow all your bottom descriptions,
Yeah.
I would just
there's-
propose that those numbers are in the same row as maximum front setback.
Okay.
bring them up one.
Right.
Because they're in the wrong,
'Cause otherwise it's
they're
like,
in the wrong cells.
well, it makes you think like maybe there's some specific use, and realistically, in all of these areas, there is either no maximum front setback or it's this amount in these 4 spots.
Right,
Yep.
right, so that needs to be, okay.
Okay, that
yeah,
makes
I
sense.
agree. Okay, anything else?
And then,
Mark, yeah.
just regardless of the minimum or maximums, the 7 will allow us to make waivers in cases, right?
Yeah, so that is brand-new language that I made up, so you can see if you like it and edit it. So that is intended with the main mill museum kind of fresh in our minds for odd situations where you either have that existing building that's set back that someone wants to do an addition on, or just another kind of strange situation where it would be beneficial for there to be some kind of flexibility. Because otherwise, setbacks are really, there's very little opportunity to make changes to that. It's really a variance request to the Board of Appeals. So this provides, in that situation where there's developed sites and you have that existing building setback, that we would almost exempt it essentially from these setbacks.
Okay.
So if we vote for this, are we adopting the language that you have here? Or is that done separately in a note that we are not seeing?
So this would be part of, so your chart notes, it all goes together. So it would be
Yes.
part of Article 11 changes, either in this format or how you edit it.
So the language around note 7 somewhere else. Right now, we're just saying 7 makes sense because there's going to be a note. We're going to talk about it later.
Oh, 7 is located here. Are you seeing that?
Right, it's here.
I meant this 7
It's right here,
on
Yes.
Article 11.
yeah.
So that goes
It's all
with,
part of, it's all part of
It's
Article
all
11.
part of
when you look at
Article 11's
the ma-
23.
the maximum front setback on your chart has that 7 in parentheses.
Yes.
So this.
It was
just-
this language. I was still stuck on the chart. So you've given it to us.
Yeah, yep.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, that's fine.
That's the answer. That was the question.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's right there with underline. That's all underlined. Yeah, okay. Okay,
Okay. And then the-
24.
Oh, and then the
Oops,
sorry.
Sorry.
The final thing on here, you'll see, still within the minimum front setback, that when we do a single-family cluster development, Apple Valley is a good example, you just did their reexamination, that there's a 50-foot setback for a front setback. And that's greater than what their neighbors would have potentially had who weren't in that development of 25 or 20 feet. Staff thought that perhaps there would be an interest in discussing changing that with the board.
The change that you've offered here where it just reverts to the permitted
That's
use
right.
line
Yep.
Okay,
looks great.
okay, add a maximum front setback section to the table, okay. All right, so we're all done with 23?
Not quite.
Not quite.
Just wanted
Yeah?
to revisit.
Alex.
I understand the functional need to have a little more leeway for setback in Saunterville. I'm wondering if one of the consequences of that, though, is going to be we're going to have just sort of like a gap tooth look in a lot of the places where the historic buildings go up to the sidewalk line.
Does the design district overlay, which we are not talking about yet, but is roped into all of this, has historically covered that, and the setback is an average so that we don't have that?
Yeah, there is, so these are kind of absolute numbers, but there is that ability, if there's a consistent setback for the 2 buildings on one side and 2 buildings on the other side, they can average it and they can use that setback instead. So it could be 2 feet, it could be 8 feet, whatever. So there's that, but also 61 Ash, which we just had last meeting is a good example where currently today that parking lot has some really nice stature ginkgo trees. They're pretty good size. And they're removing them because the building is going where the trees are. If they could have set the building back a little bit more, then they could have just used the existing street trees. So that's a good example where there is some planting. You're right, there will be some situations where you might have a building that's right close to the sidewalk, and now a new building is going to be set back a little bit further, and they'll have street trees in there. I think there's inevitable that there's going to be some variances because our neighborhoods aren't totally cookie cutter with how they're set back. And when I was driving down Lisbon Street, you know, just when you get past the downtown and you're kind of headed up, those buildings that are right on the sidewalks, there's no greenery, there's no street trees. I think it's worth that at least 5-foot setback to be able to have that infrastructure start to be generated over time.
Okay.
The overlay covers your concern.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mainly worried about the downtown with that. So, yeah, I mean, if the design district overlay sort of handles that a little bit better, that's cool.
It
but-
requires you to average. So if you were trying to develop an empty lot and there's 2 buildings on either side,
Yeah.
while you have to use these recommendations, you get to average the 2, and that creates
Yeah,
yours.
so
Well,
one is at
you
5 and
get
one is,
to.
or one is at 0 and one
You
is at
have to.
15.
You have to.
Well,
Okay.
you can if there's a what they call, I forget the exact term, but
An established uniform setback?
thank you, an established uniform setback. So if you have that, but for example, Wedgwood wasn't able to do that on all of their streets because they had some situations where there was a building setback 25 feet and then another right on the road. So they didn't have a uniform setback to work with, so they had to work with our numbers. They couldn't establish something different. And they had difficulties because it was residential. They had to have stoops or porches, and those being structures had to be set, you know, within and without, but the rest of the building had to, they struggled with how they worked
Yeah.
because it was a narrow window, and they also had an easement that they were restricted by. So they had a lot of challenges
Yeah.
with that. So we think that this will give a little more flexibility, hopefully. It won't be perfect. We know that there'll be problems. That'll
Yeah.
happen.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Anything else? Any other questions, comments on, okay, so then the J is the number 7 language.
Yep.
So now we're into 24.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just struggle with the word awkward.
Okay.
Because I understand the intent behind it. It's a hard test, right? And so, particularly if it's what allows us to grant a waiver or not.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's a better adjective to use than awkward. Challenging, cost prohibitive, like what's the real intent there? But like awkward,
I know it when I see it.
yeah, and which is gonna, I hope you're on this board forever, Mark, because that's the only way it's consistent, right? And so I just didn't know, I don't know.
I agree. It's a tricky thing, and I struggled when I wrote it. In that situation, I was thinking about the museum and thinking about where else would they have put a parking lot? How else would you have configured a parking lot if we had made them have their addition?
Could we
come
just say
forward?
challenging?
Okay,
Like,
well,
challenging is
I don't see how
good.
challenging is.
okay, here are some synonyms for awkward. Difficult, tricky, fiddly, cumbersome, unwieldy.
Cumbersome is good. I mean, I think the intent there, because I think awkward, even though, thank you for that. I think awkward is like, it won't be as pretty, or it'll look silly when people walk up to it, whereas we're going to lose productive square footage or parking spots or our dumpster access.
We're talking about inefficient site usage.
Excellent. And an inefficient site design?
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
that-
awkward felt
Sure.
awkward.
Sure.
It's like a teenage site design.
That's what
it's
I'm
got
saying, like,
pimples, its voice is cracking.
I'm picking
Yeah,
like
yeah.
pocket protectors, you know,
Sure,
like
sure. Okay, that sounds good.
Site design trips over itself when it walks in a room.
Yeah. Okay, 24.
Perfect.
Okay.
So in the groundwater conservation overlay district, we came across language that was unclear, and we asked for legal interpretation based on a request from an existing business there that wanted to be able to fuel their vehicles that they used for deliveries. So the legal opinion we got, our language could really be interpreted a couple different directions. So staff is looking to what we think expands a bit people's ability to store petroleum products in the groundwater conservation district, specific to when it's accessory like that, like if they're a warehousing facility and they're delivering delivering product and have a lot of delivery vehicles, to be able to refuel their vehicles, to be able to use those materials for the general business of their running their facilities and their their building operations. We, with this language, though, would still draw the line. It would be our interpretation for, let's say, a home heating fuel business to locate there. It wouldn't be the intent that that's the product that's primary to their business that they're storing large quantities of. It would be accessory to heating the building, cooking, fueling vehicles if you're a warehousing facility or something like that. We're doing deliveries. So that's the thought with the change of this language, is to just be clearer.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Shanna, you look like you
Yeah,
have a
I'm really
question.
sorry. I feel like I just don't feel like that's the right language structure again. Like it feels like the counter of your intent. So, it's prohibited, blah, 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 the storage of, yada, yada, except as when used in accessory to, except all storage must be in accordance, and all storage must be, we want it to be, and the exception makes it sound like we don't.
I hear you.
Right? And so I don't know if I should just be 3, or if you need except as I, and all storage must be.
So if we remove the I and just don't indent that and pull it to the left, does that work for folks?
Yeah, because it's not an exception. It's these are the exceptions, and everything, regardless of exception, must be stored according to, right?
Perfect.
Okay, sure, Alex?
So we don't allow storage of petroleum products in this district because of concerns around groundwater pollution, which to me feels more like there is some component, as someone who worked at a business that had retail fueling, you let people handle their own fuel hose, it's gonna spill eventually. But same thing goes for delivery truck drivers, also speaking from experience. I don't know if this, to me, feels I understand the need for the desire for the exception, but I think if you're looking at sort of the spirit of why we don't want to have these facilities there for retail, I'm not sure that this holds water. I would say that I think maybe a better metric is not so much how it's used, but the amount that's there, right? Because, let's say I have a warehousing facility, I have a 10,000 gallon diesel storage tank for my trucks. If that spills, the magnitude of that is much greater than a 250 gallon heating oil tank, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. This one's I get where you're coming from, but also if someone has a 55 gallon drum of specialty racing gasoline that they want to sell at their farm store or something versus someone who has a 10,000 gallon tank of diesel fuel for their truck, scale seems to make more of a difference here than anything else.
Yeah. I'll say that staff did sort of wrestle with this, and like I said, our legal interpretation was that there was some ambiguity, and we should probably clean it up one way or the other.
Yeah.
Going back to taking to three eyes, that still wouldn't fit, actually, if you read through it.
Thank you.
It would still be.
I know.
It would still be, the prohibited use is the storage of gasoline, except these two things. And then all storage must be in accordance with the standards, I don't think should be in this prohibited section at all.
Okay,
Yeah, well said.
we'll work for a spot to put that.
Yeah.
We'll just
Okay.
take a quick peek right now.
All right, so we're just going to remove those three eyes?
Let's
don't
just
think
take
that's
a
what I heard.
moment right
Can
now
I
and
ask
see
what
if
the-
we can find.
What are you trying to accomplish in this section? I hear you saying lawyers and clarifying, and I appreciate that, but I mean, like, that aside from that, this section, to Alex's point, if it is to say we want to protect the groundwater in this area, first of all, based on what's actually available in the groundwater conservation, like if we pulled up a map of that area and what our permitted uses are in that area, would we have a business with a fleet of trucks, for example, that would is there a purpose for this? And if there is, and it's about keeping the water clean, then do you revise this section to address what science tells us can be remediated or something? Like, what, I guess, with all respect and out of a place of inquiry and curiosity, like, what's the point? And then how do we amend it to communicate the point to the lawyer's satisfaction?
And also too, something I've just popped into my head is okay, gasoline and other refined petroleum products. There's plenty of other liquids that you shouldn't spill into groundwater that would also fall into this.
Yeah.
Or what happens if the fuel isn't petroleum derived, right? Is that still a concern?
Yeah. Should we go back to the language that it was there, which is on the next page that is crossed out? Heating fuel stored within the building, blah, 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 and have you guys work on it some more? And just not change it right now?
Yeah, so when we make our motion, except for changes in section 24,
One,
which we'll see,
Which, section 24-2,
Just-
E2, 1, E2.
24-1,
24-1.
because
Okay.
5, maybe we're fine
Right.
with, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, yeah, I think maybe we can just return it to the language that is there, and then you guys refine it better and bring it back.
Okay.
Okay, sound good, guys, everybody? Okay. All
I'll
right.
I'll just jump in regarding Alex's question about other sort of hazardous waste. That is kind of spoken to in the ordinance that we don't have included in that part. There is a section 5, so if we don't have it here, but I'll read it out. Other prohibited uses would include the storage or disposal of hazardous wastes as defined by the hazardous waste regulations promulgated by the Bureau of Land Quality Control, Maine Department of Environmental Protection. So there's some other prohibited uses, aside from petroleum.
Got it.
All right, so we're gonna go back to the language and let them rework it
Yes, but
and bring it back.
my suggestion for their rewording, if they
Yep.
wanted to, might be, even though it's wordy, in I and 2 and II, just simply saying, comma, provided such storage is in accordance with DEP. So you
That's
have to
great.
have it stated twice in each one.
I kind of love that, though. It's a good solution.
One other thing, let's not actually return it to what was there, because what was there just said that heating fuel stored within a building or accessory to an allowed use in accordance with the standards of Maine DEP permitting underground oil storage facilities, and the new text says above ground and underground, and I think we should change it to above ground and underground.
It also specifies heating fuel versus all the other fuel
Yeah,
uses. And what
I think if we just have it, just stay the way it is, and they work on it.
we're not approving a change today.
We're not approving a
reverting
change.
it back. We're not approving a change and waiting for updated language
And
to come.
we'll
Okay.
get new language that will clarify all of everything.
Which is to say, you can continue to be dissatisfied with the language that sits on the books, which is why they proposed a change, but
Yes.
until they can
No,
do a
I
change.
understand that,
Okay.
Okay,
Is there a consensus on the board whether you're wanting to have us have a more expansive interpretation here with how we write this, or whether you're wanting to keep it to essentially just heating fuel.
Well, I think if there is another section that addresses other types of hazardous materials, like Craig says, I think we should just leave it as heating fuel, since this was heating fuel or petroleum product
It does feel,
derivatives.
for my personal solution, and assuming that there's a whole bunch of other nasty things named in a place that we're not looking at, if this is about petroleum-based,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just heating fuel, but it's diesel fuel, it's
Yeah.
car fuel, it's,
Petroleum, oils, any, yeah.
I think engine oils
well-
might get at home furnaces, cars, and all of the different things, but I think the point is to be beyond heating
Yeah,
without giving a
petroleum.
comprehensive list, because
We're gonna miss something, we'll
bad
forget
stuff is
something.
bad and we'll keep coming out with new
Right,
ones.
yeah. Something that has to do with petroleum-based products, or, I mean, don't use that word, but something like that, I think.
Petroleum distillates would be
Yeah,
the technical
whatever,
term.
I mean, somehow just petroleum-based distillates, like he said. And since their other hazardous wastes are addressed in a different section. So, yeah, I mean, we don't need to have it be, 2 pages long, as long as it's clear as to what we're trying to do. And I don't think that, we don't seem to feel that this is clear, this is about as clear as mud. And from
Either
what
way, but I like
gather.
the direction it's going in.
Yeah, I like the direction it's going, but it needs to be a little bit different. So, okay, so no change, we won't
that good?
change anything
And well,
there.
you're looking for, do we want to go from heating fuel is the only exception to this, right? To, well, heating fuel chemically isn't different than diesel fuel, so can we allow diesel fuel?
Yeah.
And again, I think, like, my point is, like, the spirit of this, my guess, is to limit the amount of exposure on land that recharges groundwater.
Right.
And so, like, by limiting it to, like, the most essential of things, you have a building, you need to keep it from freezing, you can have heating fuel, does that.
Yeah.
But also, too, like, let's say you could heat the building with electricity, and you have the equivalent amount of diesel fuel there for a vehicle, well, I don't know. But, like, again, I think the spirit is limiting the amount, so keeping
Yeah.
it restrictive makes sense to me.
So the existing language, heating fuel stored within a building or accessory to an allowed use. That's where the question has come. So heating fuel that's related to a building, that's clear to staff. But, or accessory to an allowed use,
So.
we're not sure
That's really
what that
quite
means.
broad, that's very, very broad.
And that's, or it could be narrow. Is it only heating fuel related to an accessory use? So that's where staff has had the question come up, and is kind of struggling with where to take this if we're trying to make it clearer.
I think, okay, so like, if it's heating fuel, like, yeah, what would be an accessory use? So like, accessory use could be like, would like greenhouses being heated with oil be an accessory use? Because our greenhouse is not a structure. Because like, the way I read this is like, this is heating fuel stored within a building, or accessory to an allowed use. So like, heating fuel being used in an accessory fashion, like, I don't know, running a backyard kiln or something like that. But again, I think in my mind, the spirit of this is limiting the amount of exposure in that. So I would just say like heating fuel stored for the purpose of heating the building on the property, period. That's it. Like, I don't know what an
No
accessory.
5 gallons of gasoline in the garage for the lawnmower.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that, right?
Or yeah, or like,
That's the accessory use.
I mean, again,
not-
it comes down to like volume. So you're either going to limit people and you're going to say no more than 10 gallons in a portable can, right? But that's kind of outside of zoning, right? That's a
Yeah,
portable
that's-
thing.
that's
That's not
not-
that's
that's-
not permanent structure.
Yeah,
I think what we're really talking about here is like a tank of heating oil, a tank of gasoline, and I think the spirit of this is tank of heating oil because you need to keep the building heated, but nothing in addition to that.
It's a good point about scale, because what we haven't given you, there's language in there that requires there to be containment, you know, in case there is a spill, like a, you know, like a diked area.
A dike
or-
area.
So clearly, they're not building a dike for their 5-gallon can of gas for mowing the
I
lawn.
mean, you should, but no one does. I'd like to be
We're
clear
not
about
going to
that.
ask about that when we decide whether it's an allowed use or not. So we'll come back, we'll work on this further. Thank you. Okay.
And maybe just include more of the information from the ordinance to give it the context?
Sure, yep.
I just gotta know that. Just keep moving on, people.
Okay.
Okay. So did that cover K?
Yes.
Great. Did we,
Sign district overlay?
yeah, 5?
Yeah, so the design district overlay, the first section of changes is trying to clarify the applicability section, so it just reads a little clearer, and so staff, we've had some situations where we're not 100% sure how we're applying this, so we've tried to just make the language more obvious. And then it doesn't really address parking, but since parking is part of the standards, if someone's building a large enough parking expansion, we felt that there should be buffering and the visible, you know, screening of that new parking area, so we've added that.
Any questions from anyone on 5A? Onward, Shelley.
Okay. So we have had a challenge. You'll recall we've had a couple of buildings lately come in that are mixed use, where there's commercial and residential on the first floor. And initially, when our first building like that came in, the question was, well, are we applying the commercial and mixed use building standards? Even though there's significant residential portions of the facility, and there's residential on the first floor that we would want to have, you know, the height of the window above the sidewalk and so forth as part of that review. So just to clarify, we've provided a new section 3 after the commercial building standards and residential building standards that's specific to mixed use, that just clarifies that those elements that apply. So if you've got commercial on the first floor, the commercial standards apply. If you've got residential on the first floor, the residential standards apply to those portions of the building, kind of in the way that makes sense. So that's, there's probably still a little ambiguity with that, but we felt that that was a fairly clean change. So the next set of changes aren't changes, but I've just highlighted in yellow the percent glass, the frequency of doors.
Sorry, what's
We
yellow?
have nothing in yellow.
Oh, yours isn't yellow?
No,
Oh,
we
sorry,
don't
we
have
did black
anything
and
in
white. I'm sorry. Did it for yellow so I could remember what I was doing. I'm sorry. So you'll see the C exterior building standards 1A, a minimum of 50% on the first and second line. That's been
Yep.
a question that the board has had, whether 50% on the first floor for commercial is a good minimum. We had the Trinity Jubilee Center that came in last year and asked for a reduction because of the type of use they are. They're not a retail use. They wanted a little more privacy. We've had a couple of other projects ask for reductions, and I've given you some examples of those. And then when you get down to C, the second line requires a commercial entrance every 75 feet. You'll also see in the examples of waivers you've gotten, there have been a couple of buildings that have asked for a less frequent
Shelley, I'm sorry.
doors.
Yeah,
Can you
do
tell
it.
me exactly where you are?
She's right
C1A
here,
and C1C.
Design,
Yep. right there.
yeah, right there, number 1 and A and C.
So we jumped around a little bit there.
Sorry, yes.
That's okay. When you take us back, just give me a number.
Okay.
Yellow didn't help. Thanks. All right.
Yeah, no.
Great.
So for the 75 feet, I mean, staff will say, I don't know if that's a bad number. What we've had for requests, and I don't know if I provided enough detail in the waiver examples, in a lot of those cases, it was grade change that was the challenge. You'll recall that with the DeWitt project, and even then again with 61 Ash, because of the slope of the street, and they wanted to create a large commercial space. They didn't want to have interior stairs and ramps and things taking up space. So they were looking for entrances less frequently so that their finished floor inside could be all consistent for that space. So that's some of the reason why you've seen waiver requests to increase that frequency with which a door is required. And then C1D also, then that regulates the amount of glass on the upper stories as 25% with commercial. So then similar in residential, in number 2, there's 25% on the first floor and 25% on upper stories. So just highlighting those as discussion points for the board. And then we have a change under waiver requests H, which is really just, we had an erroneous reference and just correcting that reference. So those are the changes in Article 11, with those changes that I think are more discussion points for you highlighted. So you do all have a glazing study that Kaplan Thompson Architects, who were the architects for 61 Ash Street and then also for DeWitt, prepared. I don't believe they had ever given us this, but I think they prepared it when they were working on DeWitt. And some of the text was a little small to read, so I typed it out on the right side for you. But what they found when they looked at some examples on Lisbon Street was, even though there are some examples, like 220 Lisbon Street has close to 50% glazing on the first floor, and 200 does have that. Most of them they were finding didn't have that level of glass on the first floor when they were doing their study.
Yeah.
And then upper stories, again, they weren't finding 25 as a frequent occurrence with the buildings that they chose.
Right.
So that just gives you a little bit of a historical context for a few examples that they had prepared. And then I did some summaries for you on some of the waiver requests you've had in recent years, looking at 3 Lowell Street, where they didn't ask for any waivers for glass for the first floor or upper floors, but then they had some others that they had asked for. Amenity space came out quite a bit, and we'll be talking about that shortly in the Article 13 changes.
Amy, you had a question?
Oh, yeah, before we get into all the glazing stuff, just to back up a little, I was a little confused on 5C1C, commercial first floor entrances.
Yes.
So what does it mean that it says the entrance shall be visible and accessible from a sidewalk and shall be open during normal business hours? I don't understand the requirement. That feels like a weird.
Sorry, where are we again?
So
It's 5C1C.
Thank you. Okay.
commercial first floor entrances shall be open during normal
I
business
think
hours.
the intent is, if this is a main entrance to your commercial business, it should be unlocked and open during your commercial business hours. So it's not your like delivery door. This is a main door that anyone can access from the sidewalk, and that's how we're describing that door separate from, I don't know, a servant entrance, like
Sure, but
servers,
We should
deliveries.
name it as a primary entrance rather than
Don't
open
disagree,
during.
just naming the intent to help us wrap around what it should look like.
But even if it's a primary, like, you know, when you go to Brandon Isaacson, that's not unlocked. There's a keypad, like you have to, it's a secured building, even though it's a commercial building. So I don't understand why we're dictating the way people should or shouldn't secure
so
their
is,
entrance.
Great point.
Berman Simmons is also locked. I think most of the attorneys are doing that because of the possible, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Well,
just
and
saying
this is a design document,
That's like an operations requirement.
Yeah, that's sort of like licensing or whatever. So, yeah, could we propose a text change there?
Sure.
To say the entrance shall be visible and accessible from the sidewalk,
Period.
And be maintained as the primary.
Well, can we
entrance.
just remove
done.
that whole
Just
sentence?
period.
Just period after sidewalk.
Yeah.
Accessible
We
from
don't
a
want to
sidewalk.
make it
No,
the
I
primary
mean,
entrance to the
it's
building.
no, I think the entrance shall be visible and accessible from a sidewalk.
Right.
Period.
Because how can you have a primary if we're also dictating that there must be 3 because of the,
Just they'll
Period.
dictate it. The
Right.
entire point is just to have 3.
Just delete,
so
Have
it's
a
got to be
entrance.
accessible. You got to be able to see it and walk up to it, bam.
yeah. And so if we put a period after sidewalk and delete,
Cool.
and shall be open during during business hours, that covers, that will cover
Yep.
all of the law firms or maybe,
Well, anyone with a security concern.
with a security concern like,
That makes
Everybody.
sense.
It's just
anybody.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
So
so we'll
okay.
end the sentence at sidewalk.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, sounds good. Thank you, Amy.
So-
That is a good point. Okay, so what else are we doing now?
Yeah, we're not, just gut checking myself here. We're in M of the memo, Article 11, M. Yeah? Just making sure and we are about to talk about glazing. Because if we
Right.
say yes to M, we're keeping these numbers of which don't have edits in our version
Yeah.
of 50 and 25 and 75 feet. And so
Thank you for the reminder. So we'll put a pin in this.
just keeping us on where we're at, right?
Yeah.
So we're,
So we're gonna put
so
a pin
we're
in
saying, here's where this is gonna show up, and we're gonna come back to M and N.
M and N, and that's, yeah, so we're gonna come back to Article 11,
Perfect.
and let's move on.
There's O.
Oh, there's O.
Yep, I don't know if O is also,
What's
To
O?
be continued.
Additional.
Nope, so that's waiver requests. There was some language in there that referenced an old section of code, and we've just corrected that.
Okay, all right. So let's move on to 12, Article 12, and keep our little exhibits here of samples of
Okay.
glazing. All right, performance standards. Shelley?
Okay, so in Article 12, the first one is in our shoreline zoning standards. We've just added the effective date of the ordinance where it was unclear before.
Okay.
In Section 17, off-street parking and loading, previously, we had added an exemption for the Riverfront, Mill, Centerville, and downtown residential and neighborhood conservation B districts from the parking standards. I had located that for some reason in E, location of off-street parking facilities, when really it should be in D, off-street parking required. So it's really just moving that to a place that just makes more sense, and when other parts of our code reference back to following the requirements of D, it would be there as an exemption.
Okay, so are we eliminating the whole E? Because if you read E, what you left,
So that was number 5 in E, so there's other things that we haven't listed here for you, so E will stay.
oh, okay, all right, so you're just deleting 5, Section 5 out of that, okay.
Yeah, we're just
Because
moving it
I'm
from
looking
E
at
to-
that and I'm going, it looks, why are we keeping this whole E thing if there's nothing else in there? Okay, I misread, thank you.
That's fine.
Okay.
Then we have a very minor change to the parking L, just a word change that we thought would help make it read better. Moving to Section 21 in the marijuana language, we have had some lack of clarity with application of how we're measuring the distance between a school or childcare facility and a marijuana business. So we're looking to provide clarity in footnote 1 that if that school or daycare is located, let's say, in a subdivision or other multi-tenant building or facility, that it wouldn't be the entire property that you would be drawing that 1,000 feet from. It's the portion of the area that is the childcare use. So whether it's the daycare building, tenant space, it's from that wall, or if they have a playground, it's from that, whatever's closest to the marijuana business.
Is there going to be any problems created with that since the you know, like, let's say it's a, you know, multi-bay industrial building, and they expand into one more bay. I mean, I guess there would be permitting required if you were a marijuana business doing that, and then they would say,
To do the
hey,
expansion, and
but
then
if
we
you
would,
were
yeah.
a daycare doing that, so, you know, I don't know, I'm gonna make, you know, there's, the marijuana business is here, the daycare's here, there's another business attached to the daycare business, so that works, but then the daycare business expands.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it doesn't go in the reverse. A daycare can locate itself within 1,000 feet of the marijuana business if they choose to. Where that gets tricky, though, is for an existing marijuana business, now they want to expand their business, or they want to add a use. So before they were, you know, doing manufacturing, now they want to have a retail space. Then they end up with a situation where they can't add that additional use. So it is, we have found in practice there to be some challenges with this.
I'd like to propose a moratorium on daycare facilities.
He's joking.
Yeah. Officially joking.
Okay. Okay, so any other questions, comments on these 3 items on Article 12? Okay, I will open it up to the public. I will close it from the public, since there's nobody here, and I will entertain a motion for Article 12.
I'd like to make a motion pursuant to Article 12, Section 4, and Article 7, Section 4, and Article 17, Section 5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code, to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for amendments to Article 11, District Regulation, nope, Article 12, Performance Standards, and Article, nope, just Article 12,
Article 12.
Performance Standards.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Roger Dupree,
Yes.
Mark Roy,
Yes.
Michael Marcotte,
Abstain.
Shanna Cox,
Yes.
Alex Pine,
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, Amy Smith,
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, yes. Okay, so on to Article 13. Okay,
Okay. So in Article 13, the first change is to the index at the top. So normally there, you would be seeing all the other sections listed, but it's just to change that title to be in the urbanized area. And then you'll see the change again later outside of the index on the second page. When we get into the sections, Section 4 of the approval criteria, this is, so Section 4 is the approval criteria for development review. So this is the typical review that you're used to seeing. In the landscaping section, we do have a maintenance requirement. However, it's been unclear whether we can actually require site plans in later years if a tree dies to replace a tree, for example. So we've had some businesses who put in vegetation and it's died or it's not doing well, and we just want to provide a mechanism here, which would be the city arborist making a determination that something needs to be replaced and that we could require the owner at their expense to do that. So if it's part of the approved site plan, essentially.
okay.
Oops, sorry.
I think that's a good idea. I don't know about anybody else, but yeah, too many of the shrubs or whatever die and they're never replaced. So I think we need to have a little teeth in the requirement, the approval criteria. Okay, next. Anybody have any other, yeah, Michael?
All on that note, and I don't remember the specifics of the development review, it was quite a few years ago, but I believe there were clauses, I won't mention the property right off, but grooming, dead material, I'd be just as concerned about as replacing dead material, because a lot of times there's plant overgrowth, there's, and there's some of that too. It's alive, but overgrowth, but then there's dead material, and it should be maintained if it's a commercial area that's impacting an area neighborhood.
That's a good suggestion.
Can we
Thoughts from the
add
board?
like damaged, overgrown, or diseased, or something to that effect?
I
Which
think it
would
might be a separate portion, because here we're talking about replacing dead materials. So maybe we have another sentence that adds
Yeah,
that.
so since this is what, 4Q4, there could be a 3 or a 5 or something somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Or
maybe
even just another sentence in maintenance that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
aside
says-
from
If it's
dead,
not,
damaged, or diseased, if said shrubbery as approved has grown out of control or is no longer maintained, then it can be cited and requested to be shaped or groomed.
Yeah.
Like, that's what
some-
you're getting at,
Some
right?
kind of
Correct.
language to that effect, yeah, that would be good.
Good luck with that, Linda.
Yeah.
You can make that up in the notes.
Okay, we'll work
Make it
on
up as you
something.
go. Okay, next, section 8.
So section 8, we did some significant rewrites to last year, you'll recall, with the amenity space. And I think we've realized as we've worked with this that we needed some additional work. So the first thing that we did, there's these references to open space, which used to be in the prior language. So it makes sense to staff that the intention here that things would be close to the open space is that it's close to this amenity space that we're working with, because we really kind of renamed that. And there's no requirement for open space in this section anymore. Similarly, when we talk about yard, we've changed that in the past to setbacks. So there's a little bit of cleanup that we just needed to do here. The word buffer strip, we don't define that. Staff wasn't sure what that was, so we just call it buffer. And then when we get to amenity area, this is where the real change is. In the past, when we adopted this change last year to require an amenity space, it was only an exterior space. And there have been a number of projects that have come before us that were challenged with having enough outdoor space on site, but provided a gym or other spaces within the building for residents that I think the board wanted to at least consider whether you wanted to allow some of that to count for amenity space. So staff's provided some language here for your thoughts and discussion.
Okay, yeah, Alex, go ahead.
Now, I'm going to talk about bikes. I think it would be nice to sort of call that out, because like often I think bike rooms are sort of seen as utilitarian areas, and they are, it's just storage, but it's storage for something that encourages people to go outside, right? Like,
So
very
you want
few
to
people are
call
going
a
to be
bike
right.
room
I wouldn't
an
argue
amenity?
that
I
should count
would
for the
not.
50 feet.
No,
I wouldn't agree with that.
no, I don't think it's an amenity. I think it's just a storage room where you're gonna take and
Right.
put your bike on a hook. You're not gonna hang out there and admire your bike, or, it's so, I don't know. But, I agree with Shannon. I don't think it should be counted as an amenity.
What, I guess where I'm starting to wonder about this is if you have gym space, like, a bunch of stationary bicycles or something like that,
Then that
Again.
amenity space is for the use and not the storage of the use that's
It's not the
targeted towards fitness,
storage.
mindfulness.
Yeah, the bike
And
room is a
social.
storage. Yeah.
but the way I think about it is it's permitting an activity.
It's not. It's
not.
not. It's permitting the storage of something you
storage
use for an activity.
For an activity, yeah.
That's so that is equal to, you gave me room for my cross-country skis, but that's not equivalent to me skiing
able
on
to
site.
ski.
And so if you're looking for a way to incentivize or encourage bike storage, that wouldn't be under amenity space, reflective to the requirement to provide space to be social, active, or gathering, which is the intent.
Right.
So yes, encourage bikes and bike storage, but not here.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we should encourage the bike storage, not that I'm ever gonna use it, but not as an amenity. Yeah, Michael, did you have your hand up? Or we just?
I think Mark.
Well, I didn't, but I'm trying to understand, and at one point thought I was in agreement with Alex. But it's trying to interpret in both of these lines where it's referring to amenity space as gym, game room, library, community room, but hallways, mail rooms, and other utilitarian areas
Like a bike room.
or private.
bike storage.
Yeah, or storage, which has always been my complaint. There should be more storage, none. And if that's a trade-off to green space, which I would imagine open space means the green space, right?
Yeah, but we're not using open space, we're using amenity space.
The language that helped-
Well, it's referring to amenity as located indoors or outdoors. So whether the word is simply being shifted from open space to amenities, it's making for a difficult time to grasp the whole concept.
I think the word amenity is the struggle here, because if you're a tenant or a property owner seeking a new property and they list the amenities, trash removal is an amenity, that's not enhancing my daily quality of life. I think the language here that's really operative and that I think is really useful to include is provides physical fitness, mindfulness, or social spaces, which is like, that's the purpose of the space, is that in and of itself. I think you are in agreement with Alex, which is, yes, storage is an amenity, but not an amenity that's meant to increase the wellness of the residents. Because this is talking about like social, emotional, and physical wellness, and that the amenity space is offering
Make a
that.
segue on emotional.
Sure, but like
storage.
the community room isn't because I'm getting fit, but the community room is an amenity that I can celebrate my child's birthday in. And that is lovely and is separate from the amenity of like, oh, you have a mailroom? What a wonderful amenity in this, right, complex. And so I think maybe the word amenity is the struggle, because the intention and purpose of this is clear to me with this new language and is separate from and does not in any way diminish the need for other amenities like mailrooms and bike storage, trash rooms. But that shouldn't count, right? Like, my laundry does not add to my life. It is a chore.
Heck, yeah. Yes, Alex?
Could we amend library to be a reading room? Just to make it clear, because to the point of, a
They don't
bike
have to
room is
provide the books?
Yeah, like if you have a bunch of books on a shelf in a closet with no place to sit, that is not a social space, right? You're gonna take the
Right.
book and you're gonna go back to
Yeah.
your apartment. So it's a reading room.
Yeah?
Yeah, like I think we want something
Can't
where
say.
you can store lead pipe. No. Joke about Clue. We're gonna
Yeah.
keep going here, but
Or-
I think just if we could amend reading
Library to reading room. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
Okay.
a library with sitting space. Just something that says
Yeah.
like books and.
Yeah, because library can be just the shelves that the books are on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, anything else? Anybody? Okay. So
So
is,
about the word amenity space.
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
we want to change it to something like recreation?
well, it all depends, see.
If
the
reading is
sentence-
recreation, then
Well,
heck yeah.
the two sentences before that, you have side and rear setbacks, patios, balconies, and rooftop decks may be counted towards the amenity area, but stormwater, front setbacks, parking areas, and required buffers, including fencing, planting, or berms, may not. I don't know why we're putting fencing, because are we gonna sit on the fence, or, what are you gonna do with a fence? That's kind of,
My mother tried that in the 30s.
for me, that's kind of a
I
strange.
mean, it feels like shared active spaces, and like that you can activate the space, not that you need to be running or cycling in the space, right, like a gym, but that the point of this is to create, require, and incentivize a third place within the multifamily, of which people from separate households have a space that they can connect or be in solitude and get away from the people they live with. Either one. But that's the point, right? Like telephone booths don't count because you're going in and you're individually. So like
Can we, instead of,
Activities.
can
shared
we-
active spaces feels.
Can we give it amenity a definition? Instead of
We
trying
can, yeah.
to,
Or community
change
space
all
or
of this
activity
stuff?
space.
Yes.
Does one of those
Activity.
Well,
resonate?
yeah, but are you going to, in the beginning here, relationship of
Meetings and
residents and activity space or whatever,
Yeah, no, they'd
whatever
have to
word?
clean it up wherever it's.
Wherever amenity is, you're going to have to change it to whatever this new word is or phrase.
Because I think the way like a real estate agent or a landlord lists amenities even includes like amenity is in walking distance to the downtown arts district. Like, great.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's the language that you're using here. I do think active space.
Activity is good.
Yeah.
Activity space, or active space.
One space that I haven't seen in a lot of the proposals come through, but I've heard it from people when I've talked to them about multifamily development, is workshop space. So like a place where, you're not
Active
going to be,
space.
you're not going to be sawing wood. So if we could just call that out in here to maybe inspire people when they're reading the code to see what they want to use.
Community room or
Or social spaces
workshop.
such as gym, workshop,
Yeah.
game room,
Yeah.
reading room, or community
Okay.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah, workshop. Sure, why
But
not?
I also
Lew-
think-
Lewistonian.
Oh, sorry, but I also think, I'm thinking back to when we first started talking about outdoor amenity area, and we said that we're gonna include decks, like
Yeah.
on a triple decker, the deck
Yeah,
out back.
it
is an
says it
amenity.
right here.
Yep.
That's not
Yep,
community.
rooftop
Yep,
decks.
But where it feels like it's mixed together in this of the like private private amenity.
Oh, because it's not shared.
Versus public amenity, yeah, versus shared amenity. So it's a little bit murky, you know what I'm saying? Because the whole thing feels very like it's all clumped together and it might need a little bit more separation because there's like a per unit. The intent was 50 square feet per unit, right?
But not necessarily exclusive to or in the unit.
Correct.
Yeah.
But some can be exclusive, right, if you can pull that off. But when you can't, now you have to do it in a more communal way, and some can be inside and some can be outside. So it almost feels like you're talking about two different ways to sort of like skin the amenity cat, you know what I mean?
I do, and I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And I feel
I
like,
think we need to leave it kind of general because not every a project ends up being different. So some of the amenity space, like 61 Ash, there's going to be a little patio in the back. There's a community room. I think there's a gym, so and then some other places, like DeWitt will have other kinds of amenities. They won't
Can
have
I-
any outdoor space or, yeah, go ahead.
can I offer a counterexample to that,
Yeah,
which I think
sure.
gets at you? So let's say the lumberyard comes back up and is successful this time, down on the waterfront.
yeah.
And much like that first proposal, it was a little bit of an economical build, shall we say. And so they come to us with a plan where the top riverfront facing units each have balconies, and those balconies are 50 square foot each, and they nailed it. But there's no way that they're gonna get balconies on the interior or the back or the lower floors, and so that's why they have to put in trails, and because they're using all of the space, also a community room. It is okay that they use both, and the market will settle who pays for the penthouse with the balcony and who gets to share the community room as their space, but it ensures that a community room is there for some of those people, and I think this language lets both happen, and that they count. So if the only way they can meet this is everybody gets a 50-foot deck, and there's no green space outside, and there's no community room, then everybody got a 50-foot deck to be outside. And if they skin that cat that way, awesome. So I think that flexibility is helpful, in my opinion.
So, just rereading this, it is a little weird to have the recreation areas, which are not outdoors, sort of grouped in with amenities, and maybe that's what you're going for, Amy? And so, like, there should be...
No, I think we need to leave it very general.
Hold on. Like, take a look at this, though. So, like, area equal to 50 square feet per dwelling unit, which we all agree could either be patio, or it could be a reading room, it could be anything. Will be set aside as an amenity area or activity area which is maintained to provide outdoor enjoyment. Indoor rooms are not outdoor enjoyment.
That's the whole point of this.
Yes, and then you get down to, you're building in a footprint where you cannot do outdoor enjoyment on the footprint of the property.
Right, but nowhere is there a transition that says, the ordinance says you're trying to do 50 square feet per dwelling unit of outdoor enjoyment, period. If you can't do this, you can provide 50 square feet of amenity in these other ways.
I read it like that. I'm sorry.
so do
I don't read it like that. Okay.
So it's 50 feet, ideally outdoor, up to 50%. So like there's, a magic number we're hitting because there's that number of units and times 50 feet and bam, you've got a number. And up to 50% of that number can be inside from the get-go. If you need a waiver, it's for this specific set of circumstances. And if there is insufficient lot area to get the 50% outside that you're supposed to get at a minimum.
Where does it say that?
Well, it says up top, up to 50% of the required amenity area may be located indoors. So all of a sudden, there's a bar set. Let's say it's 4 units and it's 200 because math, right? And so 100 feet could be inside if you cannot accommodate 200 feet outside, right? That's the up top language, up to 50%. So up to 100 feet could be located indoors. And I'm going to do that because it's economical for me. I don't have to do it because the footprint doesn't allow it. I just think my people will prefer a private indoor secure space to an outdoor patio. And that's the reason I'm choosing to propose that. And then we get down to the bottom and it's like, hey, wicked, sorry, I actually need all 200 feet to be indoor amenity because I'm the professional building and there's no outdoors and I can't put a rooftop on because it's so darn high. If that is the case, then 3A II gives me the opportunity to do that. But it's a waterfall feature, right? So like we're aiming for 50 feet outside for everyone. I can choose at a personal choice because I think it's what the market demands and there's no good reason to put up to 50% of my 50 feet per unit inside. But if I can't put 50% outside, then here is the waiver that I can ask for and I'll need a waiver. This board will have to hear that. I feel like it covers all the options. It gives you all the ingredients to bake the cake and the directions on how to do it.
I think what I was trying to highlight just the fact that when it's talking about the 50 square feet, it's talking about it being maintained to provide outdoor enjoyment.
Yeah.
If we could just get rid of outdoor out of that, I think it would just be.
Well,
The
no,
whole
be-
point
Then
is that
you're
it is
getting- then
outdoor.
You're getting away from the entire intent
Right.
of the original amenity area
It,
clause.
it wants it to be outside.
Want it to be
And they're
outside.
allowing, today, if we approve this, we would then be saying, okay, you don't need a waiver to have some of it be indoors, because we're telling you how much can be indoors from the get-go without us having a conversation, which still requires at least half to be outdoors. And if you can't pull that off, then you come talk to us, and we'll tell you if it's okay.
Yeah, then we
And
can-
only in this circumstance.
Right, yeah, I think
So they could
that's-
submit something, and half of it's indoors because they felt like it. And we still are requiring at least half is outdoors. And if they can't do that because the site doesn't allow it, they have to come tell us that. That's what this lays out.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right, moving on, expiration of approval.
I just want to clarify, just make sure staff knows. So we're changing amenity space to active space as a term throughout this.
Yep,
Then we are adding after or social spaces such as a gym, workshop, game room. Then instead of library, it's reading room.
yep,
And when we get down to hallways, mail rooms, or storage areas and other utilitarian areas, may not count towards it.
yeah,
Okay.
that's fine,
Okay, perfect.
okay?
I want to jump back briefly to landscaping for maintenance. So what Michael suggested we were adding, staff was struggling a little bit to figure out,
This is section 4Q4.
Correct.
yes. So something like, and this was just me scrawling, so it's not a finished sentence, but like if shrubbery or trees are grown out of control or experiencing a lot of dieback, there needs to be trimming and upkeep, whatever. So we'll write a sentence around that. I'm struggling a little bit with how we enforce or cite that, like what is that or what does that look like? And
As per the city arborist. Give
Okay.
him give him or her give the arborist the,
the teeth to.
yeah,
Okay.
if the arborist says it looks like heck, then,
I don't think the city arborist has enforcement capabilities, like a code enforcement officer would.
well, no, but can he say, hey, this looks like heck, and
He makes
gives
the
it-
decision.
He makes the decision.
Because that's
for-
already in here as determined by the city arborist.
Right, yeah, so he
And then
tells
that
you guys, and
Comes
you
to
guys
code
go
enforcement
after
for a
him.
violation. Does that work?
The city arborist in the past has determined if a tree is dead and it has to come down.
Right.
So I don't know if he's
So-
got the enforcement or someone else, but
But
he
if he
does,
can-
he does play that role.
Yeah, so if he can get a tree cut down, why can't he get a
Well,
shrubs?
because dead and alive is definitive, and that's overgrown as personal subjective opinion. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know.
Steve Murch is lovely, and I wouldn't want to be him in that role. How is it going with your code guys and your grass is too long, but that's okay because it's a perennial? How's that working out?
Grass and weeds are defined, and when they reach a certain height, that is enforceable. Shrubs are actually pulled out of that, and they're not enforced for overgrowth. Shrubs and trees. So if you're saying to add trees, we don't have that
Yeah.
right now written down.
You don't have that
Here's-
definition.
Here's a metric that I
We
think we
understand.
could use for these, because these are buffer plantings, right? If the plant material is encroaching, like severely encroaching into like a public right-of-way, or
Those are good calls.
into another, if it's interfering with public right-of-way or adjoining property, the person can be cited for that. It's a nice practical one.
Right. Okay.
I really hate running into branches when I'm
Does-
walking down the
Jonathan, did that
street.
make sense to you, and could your guys enforce that?
I apologize, I was listening to a sidebar conversation about the exact same thing, so can you repeat very quickly?
I think the bar that we should use here is that the plant matter is overgrown to the point where it's obstructing a public right-of-way, such as a sidewalk or a pathway, or it is impeding the operations or impeding the use of adjoining property. So like,
And that's something that we'll have to bring in Public Works on.
Okay,
Yep.
well, either Public Works or Arborist, whichever you guys want to
but that
put
seems
as
like
the-
something your code enforcement officer can be like, well, here's the sidewalk, and if you look straight up from the sidewalk, there's a branch.
Right. Okay.
Well, actually, that's the city's responsibility, is it not? City can go down the side of the street, and anything that's
Yes.
hovering over the top of the street
Within the
can be
easement.
cut.
Yeah.
And so can abutting property owners, right? So that already solves its
Yeah.
own problem.
Well, they
If I have a
trying-
branch going over my yard, I can cut
You
that
can,
branch.
yeah, I was just going to
No,
say
I
the same thing.
understand that.
yeah.
I'm not saying that we're doing this to give people permission to take care of the problem, but trying to find something that can be used as an indicator of whether or not the plants are being taken care of, because that was your concern,
Well,
right, Mike?
My concern is if there's overgrowth and some of it is dead and it's becoming rather a nuisance, people are living in it. If, I know John wasn't here for the last meeting, but sometimes it creates opportunities for encampments, and it attracts vermin. When it's not nice and cleared, it's a visual distraction to a neighborhood that likes to be a nice, attractive neighborhood, but then it becomes overgrown.
So,
Yeah, but again,
that's where I
that
was
becomes
going.
subjective as to,
And
what's,
that's different than,
than what
and-
Alex is talking
I
about.
was just trying to figure out, like,
A
y'all don't have
measurable-
to take my suggestion. I was
No,
just
no,
trying to
I'm just-
figure out
yeah.
something that is measurable, that gets to the concerns that you're having, that we can actually
Yeah.
use to do enforcement.
But those metrics are already handled.
Okay.
All right.
Then
I don't know
Water
if
under
this
the bridge.
helps the conversation, but this is really related to the development review site plan. So it's really for us down the road to determine if they're in compliance with their site plan. So usually it's street trees or it's landscaping around the building or the parking lot.
Well, I
Is generally
believe,
the areas where we
I
require.
believe we have
landscaping.
had commercial
Well-
projects, development review, deed restrictions, caveats, whatever you want to call them, where perpetual maintenance, was right there.
Yeah, but like, okay, in that context, these trees or shrubs are planted to obscure something, right? And so if they get overgrown, they're doing their job too well, but they're still doing their job. And what you're trying to do is keep people from like planting a tree, not watering it, having it die, and then just having some ugly, non-screened area. So you have valid concerns. It doesn't sound like maybe this is the place.
Yeah, it
to
doesn't
live.
sound like it belongs here.
I think basically as written, it makes sense. It doesn't solve the problem that you're
This
trying
isn't
to
about
address, but
buffering,
that's
it's
not what they're trying to-
landscaping.
Yeah, this is different.
So just the fun part up here is to define street edges, break up parking areas, soften the appearance of the development, and protect abutting properties.
So where else would
So
it
it's
be
to be
then?
pretty.
If it's not going to be in development review and standards, it's not going to be in approval criteria, landscaping, maintenance, where else would it be?
Yeah, are you talking about shrubs?
I'm talking about.
He's
dead
talking
mate-
about overgrowth
Overgrowth.
areas where people can make an encampment.
There could be an argument that it could be
And
in
it's
the
not just
International
about
Property Maintenance
encampments.
Code.
It's not just about encampments, it's just overgrowth, negligence in maintenance, which particular property that I'm thinking about, I believe that there was an agreement between the neighbors and the development that happened at the time. Therefore, it was probably discussed during development review at that time. And I'm not sure, and I doubt very much that it's just one particular project in the history of Lewiston. And
Well, the maintenance
Can I
we
propose a
would fall
solution?
under IPMC. That's what the code officers would go, inspect of. Deferred maintenance.
Can I propose a path forward? If we adopt this language as it is today, it gives some of the teeth in that we're missing, but it doesn't go the whole distance, right?
Correct.
We've already asked you in another place to go get some information and come back with a suggestion. So can we, this is as much for you guys as it is for staff, can we approve this language while also requesting that you check in with the arborist and the code guys and say, what standard is there or what is measurable that gets at maintaining living stuff and not just replacing dead stuff? And we're welcome to see that sentence in this place or a new place when you come back with the other proposed changes?
I think that's a good idea.
Is that,
Yeah.
because then it gets at both,
Because
but
it's getting late, guys, and we need to
We have
keep
2 more
keep
memos.
moving. Yeah, we still got, okay.
I love these kitchen sink meetings when we don't have
Expiration-
anything else.
Expiration of approval. Expiration
sorry.
of approval, section 11A1.
Oh, did you want to act on Article 13?
Well, this
We're
is
in
still
it.
part
Still
of
part.
Article 13.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is 11A1.
We're still plugging away there.
Yeah,
We
still
are,
got 2
yep.
more items then before we can act
Okay,
on that
perfect.
one. Yep,
Are we done with the activity
yes.
area? Okay. So staff felt that stating if development has not started instead of occurred
Yeah,
was a
that's
little
clearer.
clearer. Yep.
Sure.
And then just.
Post-urbanized in the urbanized
Exactly.
area.
Yep, it just is clear what, where it applies. So those were the changes.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? I'll open it up to the public, and I'll close it to the public, and I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'm gonna make a swing at this one. Make a motion, I'm making a motion pursuant to Article 7, Section 4, and Article 17, Section 5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for amendments to Article 13, Development and Review Standards, with the modifications noted in Section 8, 3.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion, questions, comments?
Well,
Mark?
wouldn't 8.1 also, I guess it's not 8.1, but,
Yeah, that's what, it's the second 8.3?
so would the second 8.1 also have to be updated to reflect activity
Yeah,
area?
and changing the term amenity
So that
throughout for
it's all
consistency.
Yeah, it's all part
Yeah.
of that. Okay.
Who had the second on that?
Roger? Okay. Any further discussion? Roger Dupree?
Yes.
Mark Roy?
Yep.
Michael Marcotte?
Abstain.
Shanna Cox?
Yes.
Alex Pine?
Yes.
Amy Smith?
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, yes. Okay, moving on.
Can we have a process check-in for a second?
Surely.
This is, while it appears to be a small packet, and I appreciate that it didn't come in a box to my house, it's a lot to discuss.
Yes.
And I am proposing that we're not gonna make it through tonight. We might pretend that we are, but then we're gonna be real cranky at 8:50, and we won't have actually made it. So before we take a next step to either one of these memos, which one helps us tie a bow on the section that we spent a lot of time on already.
11.
Yeah, 11. So pick your pleasure and help us wrap something up so that whatever we stop with tonight makes sense to carry on next time, because the whole design district feels intertwined.
Can we leave the sign ones for,
Yeah, so
sense.
if you are in the mood to discuss glazing and all of those
Yep.
elements and make decisions tonight, then I would move forward with, because the design Lewiston standards are very much a repeat of Article 11. So that would make sense to finish that tonight and then to look at the historic
Okay.
section of the code another time.
Yes.
if you
all
want.
right, that
Great.
sounds good. So let's do that. Let's keep the signage, historic district and stuff.
For next time.
Yeah, bring that home and we can, and then, so let's discuss,
Planning Board amendment to the Design Lewiston Site Plan Review and Design Guideline Standards memo. Is that the one?
That's it.
yes.
Love that. Okay. Thank you. And I don't mean to be pushy. Are my peers okay with that?
No, I
Does
think
anyone
it's
think we're
fine.
going to make it through all of this?
No.
Do we need any
I don't-
procedural stuff to modify?
No, because it's
No.
all one agenda item.
It's all
So
in-
we're still
yeah.
within it, right? Like,
Okay,
it's
so
not,
this one and this
we're
one.
not tabling anything yet.
No.
You will, so if you end up not acting on Article 15 tonight, then I would carry that forward to another
Okay,
agenda.
yeah, well, we can-
But
we
you
can do that.
make that decision towards the end of the meeting when you see if you know.
Okay,
Maybe this will go fast and you'll have the enthusiasm for Article
Sure.
15.
Hydration would help, and your water bottle outside isn't filling up water, and we're just dehydrating up here.
Okay,
okay.
that's a good comment. Okay, so the planning board memo for the Design Lewiston standards, there's a couple of things I've highlighted in section 3 about the glazing. And sorry, before that is just changing the mixed-use buildings, pulling that out so it's commercial and mixed-use separately, as we talked about in Article 11. Then in section 4, there are the space and bulk standards for the minimum setback and maximum setback for the 4 zoning districts that mirror what we talked about in the chart in.
Shirley, where's the,
Where are you, where
is
are
the
you?
section 4 in your picture book?
Page 31 and
Yes.
32 in the picture book.
So page 30 is where section 4 starts.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're just changing building setbacks front
Yes.
on page 30?
You're just making the things we already said we liked but didn't vote on match the book over here
Okay,
That's
so
right.
far. And that covers section 3A, but not B. Because that's the glazing. That's what we haven't
That's
done
right,
yet.
so 3A is what we already talked about with the mixed-use building, and that happens on the next page as well, where we have mixed-use building standards, and it mirrors the same language in Article 11.
okay, I have a comment on page 20 of your little thingamajigger that's highlighted. You've got commercial, what used to be, commercial and mixed-use building standards. You are deleting mixed use, but you've left and
Thank you.
that looks, it sounds funny if
Feel like-
you don't
yeah.
take the and out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
You know how I am.
No, that's fine. Craig and I were
nitpick.
commenting because we'd actually flagged that, and for some reason, it didn't change, so.
It didn't get
thank you for
highlighted. Okay,
highlighting that
no
again.
problem.
Yep.
So section 4, space and bulk standards, again, A, B, C, and D is just being consistent with that which we've already reviewed and agreed to.
Yeah, and put on the space and bulk chart.
Just helping us narrow our scope in this conversation, which is really glazing and doors. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In terms of the meat and potatoes of our conversation?
Okay.
Yeah, that's really where the discussion needs to go, is whether the board wants to make changes to those 2 areas of the ordinance. One thing that you heard at the last meeting that I wanted to highlight was Jesse from Kaplan Thompson stating that Maine Housing has, preferences for less windows. You had asked Shanna if that was because of energy efficiency, and the answer was it was really about cost, and that there was a benefit to having some minimum standards from the municipality. So certainly you don't want to, reduce this too much, and certainly waivers are still grantable when people have, a good reason that the board feels compelled by.
Yeah. So are you looking to just initiate a conversation about glazing? Because this handy document
Yeah, so
is like a good starting place for
Right,
that.
right. Yeah, I was looking at the examples that they gave, and I understand that this is, they picked and chose the buildings. And after reviewing what we have already given waivers for, and the reason why they've asked for waivers, like Craig Saddlemeyer's project, and they're looking at energy efficiency, not just cost. I understand that Lewiston Housing has, they're looking at costs, not just efficiency. But the majority of times when we have been asked for a reduction in glazing, now I'm talking about the glazing on the upper floors, not the residential area. We can talk about the commercial in a little bit. But I think that we really need to change that 25%, because that does not seem to be realistic in terms of energy efficiency. It seems to be more anywhere between 15 and 20% is probably more where they're shooting for. That's my 2 cents. Anybody have any? Yeah, Alex, you look
Upper
like you.
glazing, yeah, so I think for, the reason we're talking about glazing in this is because we're talking about breaking up visual surface, right? Like
Yeah.
that's sort of the idea.
Yeah.
And so, I think lower floors, it's a little different because obviously you're there, you're looking in a window.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm.
Permeability there.
Let's talk about residential exclusively, and then.
Yeah, I was about to.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah,
a little preface.
I'm sorry.
I know it's getting late, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to be patient with everyone here. So, I think for the upper floors, and we saw this a little bit with the main mill, we're talking about like treatments, right? And you can look at, like, for example, 145 Lisbon Street, right? That's a pretty plain facade when you look at that building. It's pretty flat, but having, a lot of windows close together helps break it up. Likewise, when you look at 200 Lisbon Street, there's not a whole lot of glazing on that upper floor, but there is a lot of detail work that provides that visual interest. So I wonder if for the upper floors, we can talk about this in terms of like surface treatment or depth or just something other than just strictly glazing. Because I guess what I would be worried about is, okay, we reduce the glazing amount to say, 20% or less. And if you end up with a big flat wall with 20% of it being windows, it's not accomplishing the goal of this, right? It's not accomplishing the goal of making it visually pleasant. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, Shannon?
The concern about variation, visual and architectural interest is actually met in other areas. And I would argue that the point of glazing, in terms of when we originally created the design district standards, and a few of us were around then, is to make sure that people are connected with the outside world. And I would be concerned about reducing the amount of glazing to a point in which people don't have windows in bedrooms, for example, because the intention is both to ensure that the environment inside keeps people connected, whether it's commercial or residential, and that's why there's the differences. So, yes, I think visual interest matters. I think that's addressed in the other areas outside of the ones that, this is one of those, like, we didn't get the whole book, and that's in another section, and it's there.
Yeah, the windows have to be 2.5-inch recessed, and
Some of
that's
that's actually in
specified. And we've got requirements for empty walls not being more than 15 by 15, or.
So I'm going to say 18% is where I was headed with that. I'm going to give us a starting point. 18% on upper levels and 30% on ground levels. That's a reduction of where we're at. It's pretty consistent with where we've waived to. It's also pretty consistent to what's feasible and we're seeing in some of the examples provided, and we still get to give a waiver. I'm concerned with having minimums too small, because we can issue a waiver. Minimums that are too small that get things to us that we can't say, that's a huge building and it looks really bland and the windows are really small and they met their need. And so I'm for having a waiver be a little bit of a litmus test, but reducing these enough so that it's feasible and they're not doing 3 rounds of architectural drawings to get something through us. So 18 on the second floor and 30 on the first. Upper floors and the first.
So for residential first floor and upper floors, 18. And for commercial first floor, 30%, and upper commercial, 18.
Yeah.
Okay, just clarifying.
It's just a starting point. Feel free to take it and run.
I
Mike?
had a different question, but trying to comprehend what Shelley was just saying. So it's the same numbers for commercial and residential for what was just proposed?
For upper floors.
So right now, it's 50% first floor for commercial, 25 upper stories for commercial, and residential is all 25 regardless of floor.
Oh, okay.
That's what the current standard is.
Okay, so the current standard is 25, 25 for residential, 50 and 25 for commercial, and we're looking to do 30 and 18 both ways around.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm just curious as to the sketch that you have here in the 7 examples. All 7 of these examples were waivers?
No, this is just buildings on Lisbon Street.
Buildings on
That
Lisbon
the
Natural
developers
existence.
took pictures of and did the calculations.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
The attached ones are the ones we gave waivers to.
And I can run through that really
The
briefly
attached
and just say that
Descriptions
Okay.
are the ones that we gave waivers to.
if you turn to the second page of 3 Lowell Street, you can see a building that didn't ask for waivers. So that's 57% on the first floor, commercial, and then 32% upper story. So that's what a building meeting our standards looks like. When you go to 61 Ash, you see what 18% upper stories and 35% first floor looks like. When you go to 84 Walnut, which was raised up, you can see what a building that's really trying to maximize energy efficiency and cost is 13 to 14% on the first floor and 17 upper. And that's all residential, there's no commercial there. And then Trinity Jubilee, the upper floor was 18 that they provided, and the first floor was 25 that they provided. And then finally DeWitt, the first floor was 20% and the upper stories were 15.
Yeah, see, and it's a good-looking building, and it doesn't look like the windows are being skimped. It's just, there's less of them. So, I think I would go with the 30 and 18. That's why I was saying 15 to 20% would be, yeah, Alex, go ahead.
What are the blank wall requirements again?
15 by 15.
That's right.
15 by 15? Okay. So if we did 30% ground level glazing, and we looked at 160 Lisbon Street, so that one's just over that amount.
Are you looking on the?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the survey
pictures.
from Kaplan Thompson. And that facade is not particularly pleasant to go past, nor is it particularly pleasant to be on the inside, having walked around inside that building. But this would meet requirements, right?
Assuming that those 2 spaces in between aren't 15 feet or more.
Yeah, and I don't think they are from walking past it. So, I know, the idea is to have connection with the outside, and I wonder, you look at some of the other ones that have smaller amounts of glazing on them. So, 180 Lisbon Street, I think, is a really good example of
Yeah, that's
this.
got 34.
Yeah, so it's almost the exact same amount percentage-wise, but it's much more pleasant to be by because they're well distributed.
Right.
So I wonder if we could think about glazing in terms of both percentage, but also distribution. Just to make sure that we don't end up with, because I think when you look at 3 Lowell Street, right, something that actually met the requirement, it does start to sort of get the, like, there's some big blank spots, right? And so that's, again, like limiting that connection, limiting the visual interest from the sidewalk. And I wonder if maybe that's gonna just provide a better thing. So like, yes, let's lower the percentage, but then also have something in there of like, the glazing should be well distributed, or I don't know what the mechanism would be. I'm sort of thinking on the fly here. Because again, like if we're trying to sort of capture that feel of a storefront, you want the glazing to be well distributed. You don't want like, you have this huge glass door with a huge transom window above it, and then just a big old 15-foot or 14, 11-inch foot wall next to it, right? So,
Yeah,
food for thought for folks.
Yeah, it gets kind of tricky as to how do we word that so that we don't restrict. It's like the 75 feet for the doors.
Could you do like 30% glazing ground floor when measured on 50, like the measurement is done on 50% of the facade. So that way you don't end up with 30% on one half and 0 on the other half.
They can't because of blank walls. And if they did, so main mill style, they could have your 30% of glazing on the left, and then they could have a treatment on the right. I think that you're trying to offer a solution that gets at taste, and I don't support that.
Okay.
So like I would say the Half Moon, while that building might not be my favorite building on the street, I think that's the reason that you get to have a favorite on the street, is because of that variance. And
to be clear, I actually like the facade
Okay,
on
good.
that building, so it's not
I
a
like
taste
that.
thing.
I like
Shannon.
that.
This is not a taste thing.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make a beauty contest out of this. I really am trying to figure out if there's a way that we could.
I think the 15-foot blank wall.
Solves that problem. Yeah,
Okay,
I think that.
If we think that's sufficient.
And I think if we do that, and then if we come up, we had the standard of 50 and 25, and like, we had the blank wall, and we had to change the blank wall because we were getting some pushback, I shouldn't say pushback, but pushback on the 15 feet, and we clarified it, we did clarify it so that it would be easier for the developers. Personally, I think we need to just, if we go 18 and 30, and then we see how people come up with it. Because they've come up with some pretty good solutions, I think, and asking for waivers. So I think that would be, to see if it works. And then if it doesn't work, then let's try to fix it. I think we're trying to fix a problem that may not be there. And we're putting too many restrictions. So, can I have a show of hands on 30 and 18? Alex? No? Okay, no, that's fine.
If you're about
Okay,
it.
so we have, yeah, Michael.
What I was trying to do earlier, when I was thinking that the pictures along Lisbon Street, what the requirements were, or what they were going to be compared to what these are, thinking that those were waivers. But now that I realize that the colored pictures were the waivers, trying to understand why 3 Lowell Street was a waiver.
It was
Oh,
not.
it isn't.
It isn't.
It isn't.
It isn't. That's
The
why,
requirements.
that's why
Okay.
they gave us one that met the requirements.
Okay, that one met the requirements.
That one met, the
That's what-
others all have some waivers.
Oh, okay, all the others have waivers.
All the others have waivers. Okay, so if we're satisfied with the glazing portion of commercial and residential, then let's move on to the doors. I mean, at this point, we've got 75 foot, every 75 feet. That really doesn't address the issue. because as 61 Ash was, we mentioned it when they came before us. I mean, they've got a door, but it's like, 40 feet into the building, 40 feet, whatever, however far it is into the building, instead of being nearer the corner, or on the corner, or nearer the corner. And we need to have something that explains it better for what we really want. I mean, I understand, like DeWitt, I understand why they didn't want, 3 doorways, they just wanted 1 because of the floor space and stuff, but 61 Ash, because, the doorway's like out of the way, really, like it was mentioned at the meeting. That doorway needs to be either 2 doorways on either side of the corner, or, kitty corner with the door, Yes.
Can you help me remember why we're reviewing this one? Because my recollection, and based on what you've provided to us, the number of times that we've had an issue with doors, significantly less. Number of waivers requested, significantly less. And when they've been requested, there's been really good reasons, like there's a tenant in mind, or the grade changes and it's really hard. I would posit that 75 is working exactly as we'd want it to, which is they design for 75, and if they can't, they have to tell us why.
Okay.
And I wouldn't look for,
Changes to that.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
I don't
fine.
think that I
Well, that's
would.
why I brought it up.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so we can change the glazing on the first and upper floors and leave the door requirements the same.
yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, question mark was at the end of my statement. Like, can you remind me why we're
Yeah.
talking about
So
it?
the chair asked last time for that
Okay.
to be on the agenda.
Great.
Well, I just mentioned the whole 9 yards, so that, if I think this is a good discussion to have. Should we or shouldn't we? And if we decide no, so the show of hands on not doing anything with the doors?
Other than getting rid of that for open during business hours.
Yeah, what I mean, I'm talking about the 75-foot restriction. Okay, so what we're talking about, basically, we've already solved that problem then for Article 11. We've discussed the glazing, are we?
Yep.
So the glazing requirements would be
18 and 30.
18 for residential, whether it be on the first floor or upper floors, and 30% on the ground floor for commercial, and 18% on upper floors. Correct? Okay. So, are we ready to do a
Public comment?
public comment? Open public comment, close public comment, bring it back to the board, and further discussion. Michael?
As I was listening to those numbers, so the 4 that needed waivers, they would have only assisted in 1, correct?
What?
If this new number goes through,
Yes,
it would have only made
only
one of
been
these
one that would have
compliant.
needed one. Yep.
And there are other buildings you've reviewed under these standards. I didn't give you all of them. I just
Okay.
gave you a
Right.
sample. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just examples. Okay. All right, all right, so we are all set. Are we ready for a motion for Article 11?
Yep.
Okay,
I'm gonna do that right now.
right?
Stand by.
It's right here.
You want us to go backwards? Sorry. Can we do this memo and then go back?
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'm going to make that motion. I'm making a motion pursuant to Article 13, Section 6 of the Zoning and Land Use Code to amend the Design Lewiston Site Plan Review and Design Guidelines Standards with a requested change that commercial first floor be 18, 30, be 30. Thanks, guys. Upper floors are 18, and that residential first floor and residential upper floors are 18%, period. Nothing about doors.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, Roger Dupree,
Yes.
Mark Roy,
Yes.
Michael Marcotte,
Yes.
Alex Shanna Cox.
Yes.
Did we have to include the setbacks in there too? Did you already mention that?
Oh, do I need to? That's a great question.
That was written in, so you didn't
That
make
was
a
written
change
into
to
the,
it.
to the.
Okay.
Okay. Alex Pine,
Abstain?
Amy Smith,
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, yes.
Did you record my vote as yes? I don't know that I actually said it.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I think
great.
you did, but,
6, yep.
You did.
okay.
Yeah.
So now we go
Yes.
back to Article 11.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Ready?
Okay, yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I do somewhere. I
It's right
saved
here.
it out. Great, good work. No, but mine's got a million notes on it because we needed
oh,
that.
okay, sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry that I'm working off 12 memos and,
Isn't that the one?
are you gonna make the motion? Did I let you borrow my thing? Nope, it's this one. It's this one. All right, ready?
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion pursuant to Article 7, Section 4, and Article 17, Section 5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for amendments to appeals and variances, Article 11, District Regulations, not to include K, and not to include Section 24, Number 1, of which you are making changes to bring back to us at another time.
Okay, do I have a second? All right, Roger. And I need further discussion. Roger Dupree,
Yes.
Mark Roy,
Yes.
Michael Marcotte.
Confused. Just simply incorporating the previous motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Shanna Cox,
Yes.
Alex Pine,
Abstain?
Amy Smith,
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, yes. Okay. All right, do we want to postpone the historical preservation signage stuff?
That would be a motion to continue.
Motion to continue till the next meeting?
Just read the RE line on the one we didn't do. Right?
Yeah,
Sounds like you were heading that direction.
I wasn't.
Oh.
Okay.
Sounded pretty promising.
All righty.
I mean, I can go for it here.
Yeah.
So motion to continue article, discussion and vote on Article 15, significant buildings and districts, to our next meeting.
Yep. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Roger. Roger Dupree,
Yes.
Mark Roy,
Yes.
Michael Marcotte.
Yes.
Shanna Cox.
Yes.
Alex Pine,
Yes.
Amy Smith,
Yes.
Lucy Bisson, yes.
Can I ask a question before we tuck all this away?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to keep this because you're not going to print it and send it to me again.
Right.
As history has, okay, great.
Yep.
And then would it behoove us to keep our document relative to the two sections that you're not?
No, we'll provide you new information when we come back.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so, well, B, we did other business, planning board, the design standards, we've already done that. We incorporated it in the public hearing. And I need a motion to adopt the August 12th minutes.
So moved?
Do I have a second, Michael? Or do you, well, I need a second first
I'll
before
wait
you
for the
can
second.
comment.
Second.
Okay, yes.
I'd like under the section where I brought up the three issues, not to reflect the fact that a Lewiston worker had been injured with a hypodermic needle in the course of his job. That didn't make it into the minutes.
Okay.
So-
Okay.
So if I could
No,
get
that's
that.
fine, that's fine with that. So, the motion, with the amendments, Amy, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yep.
all those in favor?
Just I seconded that.
Oh, okay, seconded, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
Yes?
Thank you.
So
Happy
leaving
happy
everything
Labor Day.
We're not
You,
saving.
no, you want to keep the whole memo that we didn't touch.
Article 15.
Probably the
Probably
last
still
two
has a
things.
paperclip on it.
Yeah, the stuff
honestly.
on historical preservation.
I got
This one on Article 15.
Yeah.
Yes.
back.
That one.
I won't touch it.
Yeah, let me see. I didn't take it apart.
And the stuff about with the signage and things.
Alrighty then.
All righty,
that.
guys, thank you.
That has a staple in
You,
it.
Yeah.
And then
We shall
this
see
little
you
two-page,
in 2 weeks.
just a booklet, okay.
Yeah, no,
All
that's
righty,
right.
guys.